Welcome to another reaction stream. We were trying to do this last week and we had some more complications. Hopefully none of that does happen today. If you've got any questions or comments, then let me know. We're also going to be doing a deadline stream on Friday. But today we do have a Carabao Cup semi-final, the second leg of Man United versus Nottingham Forest. Man United are currently 3-0 up, so they most likely will blank in Game Week 25. And it'll be a very big shock if they somehow fumble this one. And I'm pretty sure they won't. So if you've got any questions, like I said, be sure to put them in the chat. And you can check out my team selection video to see the full recap of how Game Week 21 went for me, and also my plans going into Game Week 22, which I can discuss here briefly and also in the deadline stream, but not much has deviated from what I discussed in the team selection video. So let's get straight into your questions and comments as always. Singh says, get your snacks, lads. This is going to be a great stream. Thank you very much. Hopefully it is. A lot will depend, obviously, on external factors, but so far, actually, I'm not even going to say it. Welcome, Astravadan. Good to see you as always. Pav, I think you're responding, to, I'm not mistaken, that might have been a comment from last week, and I think it was, what do you think about Martinelli to Odegaard, Anthony to Saka, and De Bruyne to Fernandes for a -4? I completely agree with what you said. I would do the exact same thing. If Supreme Sports is in the chat, then I will be happy to go through my thoughts in detail. Just what we needed before the double game week, yes. And I actually was streaming, I think, last Monday, just before the Spurs versus Fulham game. And I think we were going on for, I don't know, half an hour, maybe less. Then things went south. Any news on Shaw? We should have complete confirmation today, whether it's in the lineup and he starts, or maybe after the game, Ten Hag should give us complete confirmation. I think he'll be fine for double game week 22, but it's very important to see what happens today. Does he start? Is he in the squad? And what does Ten Hag say in the press conference? If Chelsea don't get top 4 after spending all that money, they deserve a points deduction next season. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, though. It's not just about spending a lot of money. It's about getting the right players. Let's see if they have. Obviously, you know, a lot of them were well sought after. Enzo Fernandez, Mudryk and all that. But at the same time, will they gel in together? And is Graham Potter the manager to lead them? There's a lot of question marks there, of course. But I'm very skeptical, even about Enzo Fernandez, who I really rate. I'm very skeptical about that signing for that much money. Hey Dylan, are you listed as a midfielder in FPL? Who are you going to compare me to? McAllister? What this time? Hi Dylan, what do you think about Kane to Nketiah, Martinelli to Fernandes for a -4, or just KDB to Fernandes? Good to see you. That's a good question that you asked. I wouldn't do Kane to Nketiah. Even though I like Nketiah a lot for the next few weeks, I don't think it's worth that. It's a good question. I think KDB to Fernandes, if it's for free, I think that's the move to do, to be honest. Otherwise, I'd rather keep KDB, I think, over the next 3 or 4 over Martinelli. Yeah, don't jinx it. Yeah, I'll try my very best. Do we think KDB will get 140 minutes in the double? Yes. There is a chance he doesn't, of course, but I would suspect he starts both games and gets 70, 80 minutes in both, approximately. Welcome, Amir. I think I'm going Kane to Eddie. I'm seeing a few people say that, not just in this chat today, but also in the community in general. Kulusevski to Bruno, I like that. And -4 for Mitro to Nonto, so I can transfer Mahrez for Andreas in Game Week 23. That does make sense. I can see what you're doing there, and I appreciate the super chat. I've already made my feelings on Nonto clear. I think he's a decent budget option. Could be, you know, good in this game week. He's obviously a very big talent, but I wouldn't take it for him, for example. But if you need that move to fund the others, then fair enough. I'd go ahead with it. Otherwise, I would reconsider and just do Kulusevski to Bruno. And I'm guessing Kane to Eddie would actually just fund that enough, to be fair. But yeah, I personally wouldn't do Mitro to Nonto, but the other 2 transfers look very good. In particular, Kulusevski to Bruno. I think that's a huge upgrade. Cancelo to Shaw and Mitrovic to Nketiah. Yeah, the last time that we did a stream, Cancelo was still a City player, obviously a bit out of favour. Now he's off to Bayern Munich. So much has happened over the last week. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I think that's a very sensible move. Not much to think about there. Mitro to Nketiah, to be honest, I'd do that as well. If it's for free, I'd do it this week. If it would be for a -4 hit, then just do Cancelo to Shaw and get Nketiah in Game Week 23. Welcome, Patrick. Good to see you. Hi, Dylan. Doherty, Tony out for Gabriel and Nketiah. I just lost the chat. 1 second. Or Tony Rodrigo out for Odegaard and Nketiah in Game Week 23. Have Saka already? Good question, and some good transfer plans there. Ooh, that's a good question. At this moment in time, I prefer Odegaard and Nketiah. Now, my preference in general is 2 Arsenal attackers and 1 defender. However, if you're asking Gabriel Nketiah or Odegaard Nketiah, I'd go for Odegaard and Nketiah at this moment in time. Martinelli to Bruno, yeah, if it's for free, definitely. If it's for a hit, obviously I'd be a bit apprehensive, but to be honest, I'd still do it. I think Bruno is worth a hit this week, even for De Bruyne, and you can always do a switcheroo in Game Week 23. KDB to Bruno and back to KDB for the double, yeah. Or you could go to Mahrez instead of KDB, and that's what I'm looking to do in Game Week 23. I'll obviously assess what happens over the next week, see how Man City do against Tottenham, reevaluate some things, but at this moment in time, Mahrez is the informed midfielder of choice. Kevin De Bruyne, I think he's actually performing better when we just came back from the World Cup, and I think his performances have dipped a little bit. You know, the games against Arsenal in the FA Cup, he was a bit underwhelming. Obviously hit the post, I think, but apart from that, did nothing. And I think the game against United, he got an assist, but a bit lackluster. Having said that, good transfers. I don't mind it. I'm looking at doing something similar, but maybe not going for De Bruyne and instead going for Mahrez. Welcome, Jay. Thoughts on Chelsea spending spree? It's more than the entire La Liga and Bundesliga. I mean, if I were a Chelsea fan, which I'm not, I'd be very excited. But looking from the outside, I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. And it doesn't mean it will work out. Obviously, they're signing some quality players. Felix could do well until the end of the season. Maybe he can become permanent. Mudryk, obviously, is an exciting talent. But a lot of these players obviously aren't worth that money. But then you look at the market, it's absolutely inflated. I'm just very surprised that they're able to kind of bypass financial fair play and there seems to be no restrictions. Apparently, they're going to go all out again in the summer, according to some reports from reliable sources. And I just don't know where, you know, the action comes. When is the line being drawn? Let's wait and see what happens. But yeah, they got away with a lot, it seems. They've spent like 600 million in the last 2 transfer windows. It's absolutely crazy. And they are struggling. They are obviously in a position or in a period of transition. And I think they will improve, but you know, it's just a bit ridiculous in my opinion. Thoughts on Rico Lewis? I've seen more and more people talk about him ever since Joao Cancelo left to Bayern Munich on loan. I think he's a decent option. He just becomes even better now. Would I spend a City slot on him? I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't because I think he will be benched more often than not. And you also have Kyle Walker there on the right-hand side. You know, let's not forget him. And with Man City defenders, I think Stones, should he return from injury, Ake and Akanji, I think they're the most nailed-on defenders at the moment. Obviously, Ruben Dias will have something to say about that. But I'd be a bit cautious about Rico Lewis and not to mention Mahrez, De Bruyne and Haaland up front. So I would be a bit cautious. He's a good option, especially at that price. But I'd probably rather go for another City defender instead, especially in Game Week 25, where Rico Lewis might not even start. Salah to Bruno, and then De Bruyne in Game Week 23 looks perfect to me. I'd definitely get rid of Salah, to be honest. He has some great fixtures. He could do really well, but I don't think it's worth going for him right now. I would go to Bruno. I think he's one of the best options in Game Week 22, and then De Bruyne, not just for Game Week 23, but also a fantastic game in 25 against Bournemouth away. I think that looks really good. But once again, like I said, to Singh, I think it was, reconsider it a little bit, and maybe, you know, you could go for Mahrez instead of De Bruyne. Rashford captain this double game week. That's what I'm currently planning, and I might even put the triple captaincy armband on him. And I'm also looking to get Bruno in as my vice captain. So yeah, I have no problems with Rashford as captain. I would either go for him or Bruno this week, to be honest. I'm not looking at anyone else. Would you swap KDB and Garnacho for Bruno and Odegaard? Yes. Simple answer is yes. Whom should I get rid of myself to get Nketiah, White or Martinelli? I'd rather get rid of Martinelli. Might be a bit of an awkward time to do that when he's facing Everton, but I think in the long run, that is the move to do. Time to remove Almiron and change to Mitoma. I think Mitoma is a better option. Just bear in mind that he could blank in 25, or right now he is blanking, unless something else happens and another game is rescheduled there. They could double in 26 or 27 Brighton, but they could also blank in 28. So if you are well prepared for those game weeks, then do the move. But otherwise, I'd rather go to Odegaard or Mahrez, to be honest, or even Saka. KDB for Fernandes for a 1 week punt and Mount to Odegaard. Yes, Fernandes, I think, as a 1 week punt looks great. Even in the long term, fantastic fixtures. My only concern is that United will probably blank in Game Week 25, and of course, we'll find out for sure after today. But yeah, great transfer. As for Mount to Odegaard, I think it's a no-brainer. And apart from Odegaard, there's Saka and Mahrez that I'd consider, and Mitoma. But when I'm looking at Game Week 23, Game Week 22, and also the blanks in 25 and 28 potentially, I would just go to Odegaard or Saka. Thoughts on Cancelo to Bayern? It's a very strange move, but it has kind of been slowly simmering to the surface over quite some time. He's been out of favour. I think the final straw was him not starting even against Arsenal in the FA Cup, and I think he just decided enough's enough. I need to get playing time. Even in the World Cup, he lost his spot. So it's kind of very strange to see what's happened to Cancelo, because at the beginning of this season, I know his underlying numbers weren't that great, but he was still getting some great FPL returns and he was having some decent performances. But things have just gone down south really quickly. And just bear in mind, at this time last year, Man City had Zinchenko and Joao Cancelo, two left backs or players who can play in the left back position, who can play that inverted role. Now City have none of them, and they might be a bit more one-dimensional, you could argue, with Ake always playing as the left back, playing this kind of three at the back formation. But I have to say, I just don't see a way back for Cancelo. That's pretty much it. He's gone to Bayern, and I think he could strengthen them. He's been really good in the Champions League in the last few years, and I think that's a good signing for Bayern. Is Bruno essential? Because I'm thinking White to Martinez to go 3 Arsenal attackers for the double. Also to Martinelli. I would still just keep White, to be honest. I would rather have White than Martinelli right now. As for Bruno, is he essential? I wouldn't say he's essential, but he's, for me, probably the second best option in Game Week 22. And if you can afford to go to him without taking many hits, I would do it. I think it's even worth a -4 this week. What's going on with Rodrigo? I own him. I'll be honest, I haven't heard any of the latest updates surrounding him, but I would be quite confident about Game Week 22 anyway. Sell Almiron or Mitrovic first? Good question. Probably Mitrovic, and you could go to Nketiah. How do you feel about Cancelo loan? I think it's a good move for Bayern, and Man City can still do well without him, but it's just very surprising to see Man City kind of deviate from these inverted fullbacks, Zinchenko and Cancelo. Now they don't have those options at their disposal. Should I sell Wilson to Nonto with a -4? I personally wouldn't. I think he's a great talent. I think he could do well in Game Week 22, but in the grand scheme of things, you're going to be benching him more often than not. I don't think it's worth a -4. Lewis, Saka or White Mahrez? White and Mahrez for me. Both good duos, but I'd go for the latter. Weghorst, Odegaard and KDB or Nketiah and Bruno? No hits, says Sammy. Ooh, I'd go for Nketiah and Bruno. I'm not a big fan of Weghorst. As much as I like Odegaard and KDB, Nketiah and Bruno looks better, and you can always move Bruno on to Odegaard or KDB in Game Week 23 anyway. Salah to De Bruyne or Bruno Fernandes? This week, it has to be Bruno Fernandes, and then you can make the move ultimately later on. Okay, so I'm still a bit behind. Just be patient. I will get there very soon. Maybe a bit of rust in terms of streams, but yeah, we are slowly but surely catching up. Welcome, Mac. Good to see you. What's your team for next game week? I haven't made any transfers, and I'll just show you right now in a second. I haven't made any transfers, and everything that I talked about in my team selection video is going to apply here as well. I'm looking to bring in Bruno Fernandes for Kevin De Bruyne, vice-captain Bruno Fernandes, maybe play the triple captaincy on Rashford, and also I might make a second transfer of Almiron to Odegaard, and I think Odegaard would come in for Ben White or Botman, most likely Ben White, and it would change to a 3-4-3 formation. So everything you've seen in that video applies now, and I'll be confirming everything on Friday. I'm still not making early transfers because, you know, let's wait and see what happens today. If Bruno starts or gets some minutes, just in case, it's good to better be safe than sorry. That's the way I look at it. Almiron to Fernandes and then change him in Game Week 23 for Saka or Odegaard. Yeah, it's going to be a very popular strategy for a lot of us to do that. And I have no problems with it at all. Who would I pick between Saka and Odegaard? I'd still go for Odegaard because of his bonus points potential. And Saka's only got 1 double-digit return this season. A lot of 9-pointers, but Odegaard, I think, is just more capable of these big returns. And Game Week 23, take a -4 hit from Martinelli to Odegaard or Saka. Looks fine to me. As much as I'm a bit cautious about Martinelli and I'm concerned about him long term, I'm not sure if I'd take a hit from him to Odegaard or Saka, but in the long term it will pay off. It might not in Game Week 23 though. Cancelo to Ake and Martinelli to Bruno for a -4. Looks fine to me. I think those transfers look really good. Maybe instead of Cancelo to Ake, if you've got some decent coverage defensively or in the midfield, wherever it may be, you could hold off that move for now and make it for free in Game Week 23 because City are playing Tottenham after all away. And I think in the last 3 games, Spurs have scored 5 goals at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and City have scored 0, with Spurs winning all 3 games. So I'm a bit cautious about City defenders anyway in Game Week 22. Thank you, Patrick. Is it worth to sell Tony for Nketiah this week or roll to do it next week? I wouldn't do it this week. I would roll it and do it next week, to be honest. I think Tony could outscore Nketiah with the fixtures in mind, even though Southampton have improved recently. Yeah, Nketiah's numbers are incredible. I think in terms of XG per 90, only Erling Haaland is higher. He gets into some really good positions. Even the other day against City, he had a golden opportunity, which he should have taken. Obviously, did the business against Man United, but he can be frustrating at times, but he gets into the right positions, he keeps on trying, and you can't fault him for that. Rashford captain this double game week. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. The thing is, though, if you are looking for a differential captain, consider Bruno Fernandes. I wouldn't deviate from those two personally, despite Erling Haaland being Erling Haaland, despite Luke Shaw being a good option. I would go for either Bruno or Rashford as the captain, and I'm going for Rashford right now. I might even put the triple captaincy armband on him as well. It's not just that, though. I mean, you're right. I think Liverpool are a club in turmoil right now. They don't really have that chemistry. They're missing Sadio Mane, and not only that, the likes of Diaz and Jota, a lot of injuries. But I think the main problem for Liverpool is the midfield. I'm still very surprised they haven't signed anybody, particularly in the summer transfer window. If they don't sign anyone in the summer in the midfield, I mean, they're just asking for trouble. So Amran or Mitrovic first. Did I even answer the question in the end? If not, then apologies for that. Who would I sell first? Probably Mitrovic. Yeah, I think I said that. So Mitrovic out for Nketiah. I think that'd be a good move. Keep Almiron for the next two. Maybe sell him after the Bournemouth fixture 23 or beforehand. Thoughts on Mudryk? We covered him already, I think, a few weeks ago in some streams, and I think he's an exciting player. I haven't seen too much of him. Obviously, a great cameo against Liverpool. Fantastic in the Champions League, but not worth the money, of course. Then again, the market's absolutely inflated, and I think he could do really well at Chelsea, but it also depends on the team around him. Chelsea right now are struggling in mid-table, and it might take some time for him to flourish, and also for Chelsea to really get going and become competitive. I'm on to Rodrigo for double game week. I like Rodrigo. I even highlighted him in the best free hit team video for game week 22. But I'd rather go elsewhere, to be honest. Odegaard, Saka, Mitoma. I think they're all better options, not to mention Riyad Mahrez. So you could go for Rodrigo for 1 week. But then again, you know, if you don't have Bruno Fernandes, why not go to him instead, even if it involves a -4 hit? Shaw fitness. So there are doubts about that. I have a feeling he won't start today and he will be available for Game Week 22, but I might be wrong. He could start. We're going to find out around 7. We might be streaming until then, so we can react to that on stream. But yeah, with Shaw, we're going to get the answers today, whether it's during the game, before, or after with the press conferences. Cancelo, KDB and Martial for Shaw, Bruno and Nketiah -4 says Shane. Andres to Mitoma for a -8, or should I stick to a -4? Just stick to a -4. I really like Mitoma. I think he could pay off that extra hit, no doubt about it. But then also bear in mind how you're going to be lined up for Game Week 25. I've said this countless times. It's not about quantity, it's about quality of players you have in Game Week 25. But you might be in a position where you have Tony, 3 United players, 3 Newcastle, or in this case, you then have 2. I'm not so sure if you have Almiron or not. But ultimately, I'd be very concerned about taking an extra hit for Mitoma, who could blank twice in the next 7 game weeks. Having said that, he could also double in 26 or 27, but the point does stand. If you're in a good position for Game Week 25, you've got most of the players you want for Game Week 22 and 23, then fine, I'd go for it. I think Mitoma is a fantastic option against Bournemouth. Great form, fantastic goal against Liverpool. That's extreme quality what he produced there in the last minutes. So yeah, I like Mitoma, but just bear in mind how you're going to be lining up for Game Week 25 first. Thank you, by the way, Singh, for moderating the chat. I appreciate it. Sideways moves from Martinelli to Saka. His numbers aren't encouraging, though. Yeah, I've looked at Saka's numbers recently, I think, in the transfer tips video. Nothing special, to be honest. You compare it to Martinelli, quite similar, actually. So the thing is with Saka, I think he's got more quality right now. Martinelli has been more wasteful. Saka is on penalties too, which is another bonus. Will that change if Jorginho's on the pitch? I'm not so sure, but I think Saka is worth a move. Would I take a hit from Martinelli to Saka? I'm not so sure. That's where I'd probably draw the line. Let's see what else we have. So yeah, the chat is quite busy, busier than I expected anyway. Of course, in the deadline stream, it's even more hectic, but my aim is to go through absolutely every single question. So, you know, even if it seems like I'm very far behind, don't worry, I'll eventually get to your question and answer it. I just want to show you a few screens first, though, before I go back to your questions. So here is my FPL league, which I haven't shown in quite some time. And by the way, shout out to everyone that features here in the top 15, even Todd Bowley, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. But look at that in top position. Mark Bleakley, you know, I think that's the name. I think he's ranked 23rd in the world. And look at that points tally. It's absolutely incredible. And you also look at the rest, you know, some fantastic scores in there, but a big gulf between first and second. But shout out to Mark, Barry, Simon, Bishay, everyone else. Othmane, I think I've seen you in the chat before, by the way. Johnny, everyone else. in the top 10, top 15, and everyone else in the FPL league. Be sure to join it. You can see in the left-hand corner of your screen, the description below, there's a link. You just click on it, you automatically join. So that's just one thing I wanted to show you. But also, I wanted to show you a few other screens, which we'll talk about as well in the deadline stream. This is the fixture ticker. Now, bear in mind, this will change probably. Man United will blank against Brentford, in Game Week 25 if they progress to the Carabao Cup final, and therefore Arsenal would move back to first position in the fixture ticker, courtesy of Fantasy Football Hub. You've also got the likes of Leeds, Man City and Chelsea in the top 5. If we actually scroll down all the way to the bottom, Newcastle are second bottom, and a big reason for that is because of the blank in Game Week 25. The same goes for Brighton, who could still have a game rescheduled, I believe, in Game Week 25, but not looking too likely right now. Having said that, though, the teams at the top is what you really want to prioritize in terms of transfers right now. Arsenal, Man United and Man City assets for me is the way forward right now. Another thing I want to show you is predicted points. This may also help you with your decision making, who to captain. For me, the top two, Rashford and Bruno Fernandes, are the best captaincy options this week. If you've got the triple captaincy still, I would use it now in Game Week 22 on a Rashford or Bruno, or in Game Week 23 on a Haaland or Odegaard, for example. Even Riyad Mahrez, I wouldn't be too adverse about that too. The reason why I'm saying to use it, basically in the next week or so, is because in Game Week 29 we could have another double, but you may want to use another chip instead, a free hit, a wild card, to set yourself up for the future weeks as well. Game Week 34, which could be the biggest double game week of the season, you might want to bench boost in that game week. Remember, you can't use 2 chips in the same week. And in Game Week 37, that's going to be the penultimate game week of the season, and a lot could change by then. Man United, for example, if they have a double in 37, they could have more rotation, tougher fixtures as well. Man United are not going to get a better double than this. 2 home fixtures against Leeds and Crystal Palace. So there's a lot of things to consider, but ultimately I would probably triple captain now in 22 or in 23. And for me personally, I'm looking at Game Week 22 on Marcus Rashford. Another thing I want to show you is FPLstatistics.co.uk. So all the price rises and falls. Estupinian is projected to go up. The same goes for Ake, Odegaard very soon, Matoma, Saka, Haaland, even Rico Lewis. In terms of players about to go down, Diogo Dalot, who would have been a really good option in this double, but still struggling for fitness. We might find out more today as well. And you've got the likes of Martial and Sterling as well, who could be going down, not today, but in the next few days before the deadline. And then we've got premierinjuries.com, which I sometimes use to refer to, all the questions you ask for injuries. This compiles everything that's said in the press conferences by the managers, all the latest information. And one thing that hasn't been updated here, I believe, about Gabriel Jesus, he is back on the pitch. That doesn't mean he's going to be, back in the team very soon and displacing Nketiah. He could still be a month away, but it's very promising. No setback suffered by the Brazilian. He could be back end of March or end of February, beginning of March. That's when he's probably going to come back, and very, very promising signs about him as well. One other thing I wanted to show you before we go back to your questions is the most transferred in player this week. I think it's going to be no surprise. Bruno Fernandes is top. Over 500,000 managers have transferred him in already. I'm probably going to be another one who's going to transfer him in, but I'm still going to wait until after the game today before making that decision or finalising that move. Luke Shaw and Rashford in the top 3. Matoma, who could blank in 25 and 28. He's still up there. You've got Saka, Nketiah, Odegaard. So really, Man United Arsenal assets are becoming very popular. Not too many Man City options here, though. Only Riyad Mahrez. And to be fair, Haaland is owned by pretty much the entire game anyway. So be sure to check all of that out as well. And that is the most transferred in players this week. No surprises, really. And actually, quite a lot of managers have made transfers since my transfer tips video, where I also referenced this for some of the stats in that video. And there you go. Quite interesting stuff there too. And in terms of FPL.team, I used this for my team selection video to visualize future game weeks. Not much has changed in terms of my transfer plans. I'm looking to get in Bruno Fernandes and Odegaard in Game Week 22, then possibly make a switcheroo and bring in a Man City midfielder like Mahrez in for Bruno Fernandes in Game Week 23. And then after that, be very well set up for these double game weeks. In Game Week 24, roll the transfer. In Game Week 25, I could then get a Man City defender like Ake, Stones or Akanji in for Luke Shaw, maybe displace Cucurella, or get that 11th player, whether it's getting rid of Botman or Tony. But I'm in a strong position, I think, for the next few weeks, even if Game Week 25 isn't looking ideal. But there you go. Those are my plans. I've briefly discussed them, but of course, I talk about it in more detail in the team selection video. Let's now just go back to your questions. That's what we're going to do. And this is how I'm lining up right now, but things will change, of course, once I make my transfers. Triple captain, yep, I am looking to do that myself. Obviously, you can see right now I haven't, activated it. Triple captaincy, I think that and the bench boost, those are two chips that you can activate and then kind of disactivate and kind of go back on. But with the free hit and the wild card, once you activate it, there's no going back. Will Everton be relegated? It's a good question. I mean, with Sean Dyche being appointed, I think they will be safe, but it's very difficult for me to say because I haven't seen how they've played under him yet. They don't have much quality. They struggle to score goals. Defensively, I think they have been a bit suspect. But then again, if you remember the first 7 games of the season, I believe Everton, were right up there. At one point, they considered the fewest goals of any Premier League team. I think Sean Dyche could come back and, reorganize them defensively and get them to become really difficult to beat, basically. So I have a feeling they will stay up, but of course, the chance of them being relegated is there. Are you looking to sell Tony to Nketiah in Game Week 23? That is something else I have considered, but it would also deprive me of going for Odegaard. Now, one other thing I could do is get rid of Martinelli or Ben White, but I'm not really that... I've got other transfer plans to do, and that's what puts me off. I made 2 free transfers, says John Tao. KDB to Bruno and Darwin to Nketiah. Also have Cancelo in my squad, 3rd sub, I think. Yeah, for the time being, you could keep him and, just make your priority transfers. Yeah, I think those other moves you're making are fantastic. Darwin to Nketiah is a solid move. I would recommend that. And KDB to Bruno is the best transfer to make this week, I think. Are you not worried about White's minutes? No. And I discussed this in my team selection video, the transfer tips. There will be times where he's subbed off early. There's no doubt about that. It's happened 3 or 4 times this season. But it could also work in your favour. He could be subbed off around 62 minutes, banks the clean sheet, then Arsenal concede, and you have one over Gabriel, Saliba and Zinchenko owners. So it will be a problem, but he's still going to be first choice. He started every single game. He's very important to how Arsenal play as well. And apart from that game against United, he's been almost flawless this season. Varane or Martinez for Game Week 22? I would rather go for Martinez out of those two. Obviously, he's just come back into the side. Varane has been a bit more established, but Varane is also more injury prone, so I'd go for Martinez. Stone's injury makes Ake nailed. Potentially, yes. I'm not exactly too sure how long Stones is going to be out for, but it did look like it's going to be a few weeks, maybe up to a month or so, which is a shame. But yeah, I think Ake... The thing with him is he's playing predominantly as a left-back right now, with no Zinchenko, of course, and Cancelo. I think Ake's got a really good chance of starting most games for City, whether as a centre-back or as a left-back. So yeah, I think Ake is probably the go-to Man City defender right now. Should I bench Martinelli or Ben White in order to put in Shaw? I'd rather bench Ben White and start Martinelli based on the fixture. I think Everton could score, but I could also see Martinelli doing well. I bought Mudryk, Fernandes and Nketiah for -4. Now watch Salah explode. It's possible, but even if Salah does really well in Game Week 22, I still wouldn't buy him right now. Liverpool could have plenty of doubles very soon, but he's just not worth that money. And I think those players are bringing in particular Bruno Fernandes and Nketiah, I think they could make up that -4 hit in abundance. De Bruyne, Almiron and Mitrovic to Bruno, Odegaard and Nketiah for -4. Honestly, mate, fantastic transfers. Even though I think Almiron could do well over the next 2, Mitrovic is decent as well up until Game Week 25. I would make those transfers, take the hit. Any news for Reece James? The last thing I heard, and I think it might have been a week or 2 ago, is that he's slowly but surely coming back, and I'm not exactly sure when that will be, but I'll double check that for you. If you own Robertson, do you start him Game Week 22? Good question. It depends who the alternative is, really. But I wouldn't be too adverse to starting him. Having said that, Liverpool have a really shocking defence right now, and I'd be very surprised if they kept a clean sheet over the next few. I think the fixture is pretty decent. Having said that, though, yeah, it just really depends on who he's up against in your team. Kate is also leaving. Liverpool need 3 or 4 midfielders, yeah, to add squad depth. Thiago's injury prone and he's also 30. Liverpool have an ageing midfield and they don't have anyone really of the profile of Gini Wijnaldum. He hasn't been replaced and he left years ago. Liverpool have a lot of issues and I think the crux of it lies in the midfield. Kane, Almiron to Nketiah, Bruno Fernandes with 2 frees. Looks really good to me. My only concern is getting rid of Kane, but you are getting Nketiah, who's got a double game in 23. Fantastic game in 25, so it does make sense. Kane back for Mitrovic in a couple of weeks, or do avoid KDB hokey cokey. I'm not too adverse to that. I think that's a good move to do Bruno to KDB and all of that. But like I said, I would also reconsider it and instead of KDB, maybe go to Mahrez instead. Thoughts on Sabitzer to Man United and Enzo to Chelsea. I think Sabitzer could be a decent signing. I think he offers a lot what Eriksen does, maybe not as much quality on the ball, but he's also better off the ball than Eriksen. And with him missing out until the end of the season, I think it's a good emergency signing. As for Enzo Fernandez, he's obviously got a lot of talent, did really well in the World Cup, has had a great Champions League campaign. I think, look, it's his decision, it's his career. I would have liked him to stay at Benfica a little bit longer, until the end of the season at least. Maybe Madrid, Barcelona, whoever, might have been in for him in the summer. And I think Benfica are a really good team right now. They could have reached a quarterfinals of the Champions League or even semi-finals with Enzo Fernandez. Now the chances have reduced, but I think Chelsea, if they can get the players around him right, I think Enzo could thrive, of course, but it's a really big if. Welcome, John Darren. Good to see you. Yeah, there's a lot of questions I have missed out on. I'll try to go through everything as well. Number 6 says Alex. You see, now I'm trying to think what we're saying now. Number 6. Oh, you're number 6 in the league that I showed you. Yeah, it was such a long time that you put that comment, so apologies for that. KDB to Bruno and Patterson to Botman plus start Kepa this week. Yeah, I think that looks fine. I would start Kepa over most goalkeepers this week, despite the fact that I don't think Chelsea will keep a clean sheet, because you're looking at the alternatives like Ward and all of this. If you have someone like Sanchez, great, start him. But, in all likelihood, I think Kepa's a decent option to start. KDB to Bruno, I think it's a really popular move this week. Patterson to Botman looks fine to me, despite Newcastle blanking in Game Week 25. I think it's a decent long-term move, but if I were to make that, I'm mainly looking at Game Week 22, and I'd rather go for Odegaard, Saka, and Mahrez Singh, to be honest. I think they're better long-term transfers. Mitoma, really like him, but like I've said before, in my situation anyway, I'm looking at getting double Game Week 22 and 23 players, and not to mention, I also don't want to, get too many blank players in Game Week 25, and Mitoma will probably blank there as well. Time to sell Martial? I'd say so. Obviously, wait for the lineup today, see if he's in the squad or anything like that, but I think ultimately, whether you keep him for Game Week 22 and, up until Game Week 23, he's a sell. It's just a matter of when you do it, and Martial to Nketiah looks really good. Yeah, Tony is the most obvious option, and he's my favourite forward besides Kane and Haaland. But having said that, Tony does blank in 25 if United do progress today, and he also faces Arsenal in 23, whilst Nketiah obviously features in 25 and has a double in 23. Who should I transfer out for Mount, says Alex. Got 9.8 million in the bank with Fernandes already in the team. Oh, good question. Saka, Odegaard or Mahrez. I'd go for one of those three. I like Mitoma a lot, by the way, but it has to be one of those three. And you've already got Fernandes. Yep, looks fine to me. The way I'd rank it is probably Odegaard first, Mahrez second, Saka third, but it's kind of a close call between all of them. Start Botman or Mahrez? Wow, that's a good question. I think Mahrez has the highest ceiling, but Botman has the higher floor, if you know what I mean. He's more likely to return, but Mahrez has the potential of a double-digit return. So I'd probably go for Botman and go safer there. Go for 2 Newcastle defenders with Trippier as well. Also, I'm bringing in Nketiah for triple up with Martinelli and White. I like it. My only concern with that is that you don't have Saka or Odegaard, but you can't cover everyone. And either way, Nketiah is arguably the second or third best Arsenal option right now. Welcome, Julio Peña. Hi, Dylan. Thoughts on bringing Ake and Fernandes for Cancelo and Almiron, and then transfer out Fernandes for Odegaard in Game Week 23. This will allow to still keep KDB for both Game Week 22 and 23. Yeah, I've seen... Well, actually, that'll be a lie. Maybe I haven't seen that too much. That's a good idea. Quite interesting. Ake and Fernandes in. Yeah, I think those transfers look spot on. Ake might not do that well in Game Week 22, but 23, I could see one clean sheet. In Game Week 25 against Bournemouth, great opportunity there as well. Probably the most nailed City defender right now. Fernandes speaks for himself. I like it. I honestly like it. Julio Peña, I've got no problems with that whatsoever. Now, in terms of premiums, I do prefer Kane over KDB, but when you look at Game Week 23 and you also look at Game Week 25, KDB does have better fixtures and obviously more fixtures than Harry Kane, so I think that looks spot on. Do you think Klopp will be sacked next season? I think it'll take a lot for Klopp to be sacked, so even if Liverpool finish 7th or 8th this season, and I think they'll finish around 6th maybe, or 5th, I think he'll still get another year at least, but he's got a lot of credit in the bank. I think it just depends on what happens next season. If the players are clearly not playing for him, if they're still struggling, even if they make investment, which to be honest is a big if, then maybe. But I think Klopp will stay until next season and beyond, to be honest. Who do you start, Akanji or Cucurella? That's a good question. I don't see either team keeping a clean sheet, but I think Man City have a better defence. If you've got Kepa, I'd start Akanji. Otherwise, just, 1v1, who do I think has the better chance of a clean sheet? Probably Cucurella. What do you think about Ben Mee this week? Decent option. I think Southampton will score. Having said that, I think Brentford will get the win, but would I count on Ben Mee getting an attack and return, to kind of bail you out? Not so sure. So I think Ben Mee's all right, but I don't think he'll keep the clean sheet. So not the biggest fan of him in Game Week 22. Thoughts on saying Almiron to Matoma, even though it'll increase my blank players to 6. That's the problem. If you've got too many blank players in Game Week 25, I would look elsewhere. If you can do Almiron to Odegaard or Saka, just go for that instead. Mahrez as well. I think that could be a better transfer for you. Get more points than Matoma, have more games to play, and save yourself another headache. So as much as I like Matoma, in your situation, I probably wouldn't do that transfer. Is Game Week 24 so far looking like a normal game week? Yes. So Game Week 23 will definitely be a double. We know this. Same with Game Week 22 as well. Game Week 25 will be a blank game week, and it's looking like Man United versus Brentford will be a blank. Same with Newcastle versus Brighton. Game Week 28 is also going to be a major blank game week. The other major blank being in Game Week 32, and we should have major double game weeks in 29, 34, and 37. The biggest of those being in Game Weeks 29 and 34. So Game Week 24 will be absolutely normal. That's why I'm looking to roll the transfer in that game week. I don't think he'll be essential because I don't see Diaz starting week in, week out, and City have been maybe not doing fine just without him, but they can cope without him with Stones if he returns from injury, Ake and Akanji. But I think Diaz is still their best defender. I still think he is, and maybe not to the same level as he was when he first joined City, but yeah, I don't think he'll be nailed on, to be honest. Is Cucurella versus Fulham better than Almiron versus West Ham? I'd actually go for Almiron this week out of those two still. Is Havertz a good hold? To be fair to him, he hasn't been as bad as I thought he would be. He got a big return, I think, against Bournemouth when, just coming back from the World Cup. Also a few returns here and there, some disallowed goals, but I would still sell him. To Nketiah, Harry Kane, Erling Haaland. I like Ivan Toney long-term as well. But yeah, I think any of those strikers would be a good transfer. Then again, though, if you want to make moves in the midfield, go for Odegaard, Saka, Mahrez, Matoma, whoever it may be, then keeping Havertz isn't too bad, I think. Like I said, citizens, I don't know who you're starting Robertson over. I don't think Liverpool will keep that many clean sheets, but if they were to keep one, I'd probably say Game Week 22 is their best chance. So in that case, I wouldn't mind starting him. But if you're starting him over Ben White, I'd probably just go for Ben White. Which striker to replace Ferguson with 9.3 million? Nketiah. Essentials for a wildcard team. Be sure to check out my wildcard video. I've covered everything there. I'm not sure about essentials, but I would go for 2 or 3 Arsenal players, including someone like Odegaard, Saka, and maybe Nketiah. You could go for that triple up in Arsenal attack, but I would rather still go for an Arsenal defender and 2 Arsenal attackers. So take your pick from those 3. Who else? Maybe Riyad Mahrez would be another one. Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, Luke Shaw. And you could also bear in mind Game Week 25. You can still build a really strong wildcard squad for the next 3 game weeks whilst not jeopardizing Game Weeks 25 and beyond. Will Walker play or should I get rid of him? He won't start week in, week out, if that's what you're asking, but I think he will share minutes with Rico Lewis, and it depends on the nature of the opposition. When Man City come up against Arsenal, for example, I could see Walker starting in those kind of games. So, yeah, I think he'll get game time, but not as much as maybe you would think. Also, Jorginho, I'll be honest, it's an underwhelming signing. But he does have qualities that could help Arsenal, and he's not going to start, I think. He's probably going to be an understudy to Partey and Xhaka. Having said that, I think he could bring something else that Arsenal don't have, and I think that's a bit more control, slowing the game down, and also another good penalty taker in the midst. So he does have some qualities, mainly in the passing, the way he keeps things ticking, but he also has some really big weaknesses, especially defensively. If he's kind of one-on-one against a really good attacker, then Jorginho is going to struggle. But if you can protect him, and I think he can work well with Zinchenko alongside him, kind of slotting in as the inverted midfielder, then I think Jorginho could thrive. But yeah, I think for the value, 10 million plus 2 million in add-ons, it's a decent signing, a decent kind of backup. I think he can do well. But obviously it's underwhelming when you compare him to the names like Caicedo and the other moves that Arsenal were looking at. Also on Borro, I think he could be the best or the most significant signing from the January signings, of course, from anyone that we've seen. Even over Enzo Fernandez, who's at 5 million, he's got priced today, and all these other options like Mudryk. I think Borro could be the best. Spurs have some really good fixtures in the long term, especially starting around Game Week 23 and 24. So I think he could be a really good FPL option to consider, and he could be the one to go for over Perisic. Now, as an overall player, I've only seen him in the Champions League, and he looked fairly decent, but but I haven't seen him much in the Portuguese league, I'll be honest. I haven't really seen him, only some compilations and stuff, which I never really use to base, my judgments on a player. Yeah, Bruno Guimaraes is suspended for a few games. Yeah, that is a good point. That's a really good point. He got the red card against Southampton. And I think Newcastle's clean sheet odds, like you said, will be minimised a little bit. It will reduce. But I still think they can keep the clean sheets without him. But you make a really good point there, Corey. KDB, Almiron and Martial to Fernandes, Odegaard and Nketiah worth a -4. Yes, I think it is worth a -4. I have no problems with the transfers you are making whatsoever. Salah to KDB and Bueno on my bench to Ben White for a -4. Well, if Bueno's on your bench, there's no need to take a hit from Ben White, to be honest. So yeah, if you've got a good 11, do Salah to KDB or something like that, and then get Ben White in next week. But to be honest, KDB away to Tottenham versus Salah, yeah, I'll be honest, I'd probably keep Salah for this week and then get KDB and White in next week. That's what I'd probably do. But that's, it's completely up to you what you do. We don't know which teams are doubling in Game Week 29 yet. We don't know that. So as we, progress through the months and the weeks and we find out what happens in the FA Cup and all of that, that's when we'll have more information. But right now, I can't tell you who's going to double in 29. I think Arsenal have a really good chance of a double, but that doesn't mean it will definitely happen. Thank you very much, Goldhead. I appreciate it. And as he says, if you haven't already, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this stream to well over 100 likes, then maybe push on towards 200. And we're also looking to get to 18,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed already, I've answered your question, or you're enjoying the content, then be sure to do all of that and hit the notification bell so you never miss a single upload or stream. We're planning to do another deadline stream on Friday, so in just 2 days time I'm going to be back here answering your questions. We might have even more information, some different topics to cover as well. And tomorrow I'm planning to release a UCL Fantasy latest draft video. If not, that'll be released over the weekend or something like that, and there's going to be much more content headed your way. Champions League is back this month in just under 2 weeks time, and those streams will be back as well. So thank you, Goldhead, and thank you to everyone else who's tuning in. White to Zinchenko, Martinelli to Saka, and Kane to Bamford for a -4 right now. Well, you didn't say right now. Yeah. The thing is, White to Zinchenko for a -4, no. I think Zinchenko's a better FPL option than White right now, but it's not worth a -4 for me. Martinelli to Saka could be. I'll be honest, mate, I'd only do Martinelli to Saka, and maybe White to Zinchenko for free, but I wouldn't do Kane to Bamford. I think Kane's still a far better option in FPL. Yes, Bamford might outscore him in Game Week 22, but in the long run, I'd much rather have Harry Kane. Thank you, Chris, for the super chat. If you've got a message that you want to put, then just put, input your message in the live chat and I will read it out. But thank you very much for that, mate. I appreciate it. Best Stones replacement says Tech, James, Ake, Badiashile, Porro, Moreno, or anyone else. I think Porro could be the one to look out for. If I were to take a plunge on a January signing, I think it would be him. Maybe not this week against City, but yeah, he's a really good one to keep an eye on. Who else would I go for out of the others? I think it'd be Ake or James. So the way I'd rank it is probably Ake first with the double in mind, then Porro, then James, and then the other two I'm not really a big fan of, but yeah, they could also be worth considering too. Martinelli to Saka for a -4. I think long term it pays off. So yes, it's worth the hit. I wouldn't be that adverse to doing it, but at the same time, it's a question about timing as well. They're both facing Everton. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Everton actually concede more chances on their right-hand side, so where Martinelli is operating. So I think Martinelli could actually outscore Saka in Game Week 22. So that could backfire this week. So maybe I'd hold it for Game Week 23. KDB and Almiron to Bruno and Mitoma for a -4 says Getter. Yes, I would do it. If you're well set up for Game Week 25, you don't have too many blank Game Week players, I'd go for it. Even if it means, Mitoma giving you an extra headache, so be it. I'd still go for it. Martial to Nketiah, Martinelli to Odegaard, Saka for a hit, says Goldhead, or just a striker transfer. I would just do the striker transfer. Next week, I would make the kind of sideways switch, you could call it, and then bring in Odegaard or Saka. Potentially for free, maybe for a hit, but like I said, with the way Everton play, with the amount of chances they concede on Martinelli's flank, I'd probably keep Martinelli for at least one more week. Gabriel Mahrez or White and KDB? Good question. Probably White and KDB, but I think it's really close. Gabriel White is 50-50. Gabriel's obviously more nailed on, more attacking threat, but at the same time, White is better for bonus points and he can also bank early clean sheets. Mahrez versus KDB. I think KDB's the overall better asset, but right now, Mahrez is in better form. So It's honestly 50-50, but I'd probably go for White and KDB. Nketiah's third attacker or Gabriel's third defender? Right now, I'd say Nketiah. And maybe that could differentiate yourself from the rest, going for a triple up in Arsenal attack. Just bear in mind, Jesus is back on the pitch. I would expect him to be, in the squad from next week, or from next month onwards. So that's something to kind of keep at the back of your mind. But I think Nketiah, if you're just comparing them in isolation, he's the better FPL option at the moment. Mitra to Nketiah and KDB to Bruno. Thoughts, Dylan? Looks completely fine to me. I would recommend the exact same transfers, so I don't think there's much more for me to add there. I think that's perfect, to be honest. All right, so Tech says, Brighton most definitely, they will double in 29 as the fiction 25-28 are both highly likely blanks. Yes, I also saw, I'm not sure if it was maybe a typo or something, but I did see that they could blank, or could double, should I say, in 26 or 27 as well. Yeah, Brighton are another team that could double in 29. Arsenal, you would expect to double as well in 29. But, like I said, we will find out more once we get closer to that game week. We know a bit more about game week 28 and 32 because that coincides with the FA Cup and the quarterfinals, semi-finals and all of that. But yeah, that is a good point. Thank you, Godhead. I appreciate it very much. And enjoy the game today, of course. Man United versus Nottingham Forest. We will find out the lineups in 15 minutes. Maybe we'll get some more clarification on Luke Shaw. Abraham says, I would like your opinion on the bench boost on when to use. Good question. As of now, I was thinking game week 23 or 28, but I think 28 teams may blank. Yes, exactly. Game week 28 is one of the big blanks of the season. The other one being game week 32. So that is not a week to use your bench boost. To be honest, it's a really overrated chip. You could use it whenever, even now, potentially. But I would probably look to use it in a double game week, so 23 is a fine option. But if you use it in conjunction with a wild card, you could perhaps use it in game week 34, which could be the biggest double game week of the season, and you could feasibly get a 50-man squad full of double game week players. So I would say game week 23, you're right on track there. Game week 34, game week 29 potentially as well, especially if you wild card in game week 28. So that's kind of the weeks I'd be looking to target. 23, 29, and 34 to use the bench boost. But like I said, any kind of week, even if you have single game week players or your bench is looking good, I would be open to using it, to be honest. Let's see what else we have. We've got a lot of questions. Some of them obviously a bit lengthy. So I'm going to try to go through them because I want to give some detailed answers as well. So next up is De Bruyne to Bruno. Yep, fine with me. Very popular transfer this week. I'm looking to do the same thing. Martin to Odegaard. And which one of Darwin to Nketiah and Andreas to Mitoma for a -4? As much as I like Mitoma, I would do Darwin to Nketiah. I think that's the better move for you there, Dutta. Thank you, Seb Gold. Very much appreciate it, as always. Same with Goldhead and everyone else. So thank you, Seb. Would you do KDB to Bruno, KDB or Saka, Bruno, Saka? Oh, so yeah. So which switcheroo would I do? I would rather do KDB to Bruno than back to KDB. I think Saka outperforms KDB in game week 22. And when I look into the weeks beyond, yeah, I think that makes more sense. So I'd rather do KDB to Bruno than back to KDB if you wish, or Mahrez. Hill says, hi Dylan, is it worth taking a hit to replace Walker with Ake for a double game week 23? I think Ake is more nailed on. He'll get more minutes and start the vast majority of games. So yes, I think it's worth a hit. But once again, it's all about timing. So going into game week 23, would I take it for, Ake in for Walker? Yeah, I probably would. Would I do it in game week 22? No. I don't see a clean sheet anyway for Man City. And, it might be a bit of a difficult game. Or, I think Walker will start in that one, for example, up against Heung-min Son. So, yeah, I'd probably save it for game week 23 and I would do it. I think I'm going Bruno as captain. Thoughts? Yeah, as captain, I have no problems with it. Even as a triple captain, if you're looking for a differential option, that is the one to go for this week. Bruno Fernandes, of course, his ownership is going to keep on rising. If he's not at 10% ownership, then he will be very soon. And honestly, even despite, how many people are transferring him in, the effective ownership won't be that high in terms of if you captain him or triple captain him, you're going to gain a lot whenever he returns something. So I like it. KDB and Almiron to Bruno Mitoma from -4. I would go for it. But once again, Getza, be aware of game week 25. If you have a lot of blank game week players there already, maybe a lot of Newcastle, Man United assets, Brentford assets, etc., then I would be cautious and maybe avoid that hit. But otherwise, I'd go for it. I think Mitoma's a great option. Tony Botman, me, out for Mitrovic, Ake, and Pedro Porro next game week for -8. Already used my free hit and wildcard, and they will most likely blank in game week 25. Yeah, I honestly like the look of it. Then again, I don't mind Newcastle defenders up until game week 25. So you don't have to get rid of all of them at once. You could kind of do it gradually. So get rid of 1 or 2 in game week 23 for a -4 hit, and then do the other one for free. So you don't have to do all of it at once for a -8, but I think you're on the right track and it looks really good. And actually, you know, looking at it now in game week 25 when I need a defender, I am considering going for Pedro Porro. Triple captain Rashford, yes, I am looking to do that. And to be honest, I might as well just activate it on stream as well. I think I will be using it. That is my current thinking, as I discussed in my team selection video. But, you know, apart from the streams and videos, I've kind of left FPL, you know, the website and all of that untouched. So that's why I didn't activate the triple captaincy. But that is my current thinking. What was your plan for game week 22 and 23? The same as the team selection video. So for game week 22, I'm looking to make 1 or 2 transfers, get Bruno in for KDB, then potentially Odegaard for Almiron. Game week 23, I'll then bring in Mars for Bruno Fernandes for free. And then in game week 24, roll the transfer. And in game week 25, maybe make some defender transfers, potentially get an 11 out for blank game week 25 as well. I could risk not doing the sideways, keep Martinelli and instead do Almiron to Matoma next week. To be fair, I do like that move a lot, Goldhead, and I'm assuming you are well set up for game week 25 anyway, so that shouldn't be an issue regardless. But yeah, you know, you're on the right track doing Martinelli to Saka or Odegaard, especially for free. But doing it for a hit this week, I'm just not so sure. I generally think Martinelli could outscore them. Hey Dylan, KDB, Bruno Tamares. That's exactly what I'm looking to do. For my team selection, I discussed this. I think that's a really good move, Diogo. Of course, I'll see how City perform against Spurs. Maybe I'll, you know, evaluate and change my opinion. But that looks fantastic right now. Wan-Bissaka or Botman for this game week? It has to be Wan-Bissaka. If Diogo Dalot is suddenly in the squad or in contention to start for double game week 22, then that could be an issue. But with Wan-Bissaka having a double game week, it has to be him. Hi Dylan, can a fixture get rearranged for Brighton in game week 25 blank? I think it could. I think there is a chance of that. And if not, they should have a double in game week 29, as Tech said earlier. They could also double in 26 or 27. So, you know, nothing's kind of set in stone. But there is a really big chance they blank in game week 25 and 28. So Tech has put the lineup, or you've mentioned the lineup. We can go over it now, by the way. We might as well. So let me just get it up on stream. Give me a second. I will go through the Man United lineup and see how they are lining up. Yes. Okay, live score is not working here. I'll just use the Twitter page. I think they've announced it already. No, they haven't. Yeah, we should get it in 9 minutes officially, but I'm guessing some journalist has put the squad already. I haven't been able to locate it though, so yeah. Maybe I'll have another look in a minute or two. But yeah, we'll go back to your questions since I'm not able to find it right now. So yeah, full strength Q11 from United, even they're 3-0 up and at home. Garnacho, Weghorst, Heaton over Rashford, Martial, De Gea only. Yeah, and United have a really thin squad, and I think I saw something like they play, 7 times before the Carabao Cup final, should they reach it, and Newcastle only play 3 times. And I think United play Barcelona only 3 days before a potential Carabao Cup final against Newcastle. So yeah, I mean, I would have expected a bit more rotation, but then again, if you kind of change too much and put 7-8 changes, you know, that could really disrupt you, and Nottingham Forest could then suddenly be with a chance of a comeback. But yeah, it does look a bit strange. Is there anywhere that you can get the stats for people's captain percentage? Yes, livefpl.net, Pav. So when you check a player, it will say EO, and that means effective ownership. So if someone's over 200% effective ownership, for example, and you're not captaining that player, any return they provide, like Erling Haaland, you know, will be a massive, you know, detriment to your rank, and you could go down just because of that, really. Is now a good time to triple up on Man United players? I think it's the best time to, because by the time you get to Game Week 23, you'd want Arsenal, Man City players, and then beyond that, Man United will blank in Game Week 25. Having said that, they could also have a double very soon. I think in Game Week 29, they could have a double just after a potential blank in Game Week 28. So yeah, Man United assets are going to be very difficult in the weeks to come, but right now, it's very simple. I would triple up, and I think that's the free to go for. Odegaard or Nketiah? I still prefer Odegaard. I think in terms of bonus points, no one comes close in the Arsenal squad. Even Bukayo Saka, who is probably the best option besides Odegaard. Yeah, it's a really close call, but I'd go for Odegaard. Thank you, Hedge. So you put the exact line up there. Let me read it out. So Heaton, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez, Shaw. He's back in the squad, so there that answers all the questions about his fitness. Casemiro, Fred, Anthony Fernandez, Garnacho, and Weghorst. I mean, yeah, like Tech said, there is a few changes. You know, Heaton getting the nod, Garnacho as well. But, you know, you would have expected maybe Fernandez to get a rest. Luke Shaw as well, maybe not too... Then again, I can understand Shaw because he's just come back from, you know, he hasn't had too much match rhythm recently because he's missed out due to illness, I think. So that does make sense. But, you know, maybe one of Varane or Martinez, they could have been benched. Then again, though, you know, Ten Hag knows his squad. He's been seeing them in training. It's a strong squad. They should get the job done. Even Casemiro, you could say, is a bit of a surprise, you know, for him to start. But yeah, thank you, Hedge, for putting the lineup. I appreciate it. Who should I get rid of first? Is Akash. Laporte, Martial, Ferguson, Almiron. Good question. Martial, I think. He's not in the lineup, is he? Well, at least in the bench, should I say. Yeah, Martial is the worst option, I think, from the lot. I would get rid of him first. Brighton can't get a game rearranged in Game Week 25 as the midweek slot is occupied as they demolished Liverpool in the FA Cup and they made it to the next round. Yep, that is true. That is true. I'm not sure about the double in 26-27. It might have been a typo or just a mistake by Ben Krellin, but yeah, you are right about that, Tech. I appreciate that. Nice to see that Rashford is getting a rest ahead of the double. Yeah, exactly. That's a really big plus. I think that just makes me even more inclined to do that. It's a good point. Best defender to replace Aspie. Already have Triple City, Arsenal, Trippier, and Shaw. So in a few weeks' time, I think Pedro Porro could be a really good option for you. You know, he's got some really good underlying numbers offensively, had a good Champions League campaign so far, and not to mention, he's only 5 million, and Spurs have some fantastic fixtures coming up. The problem is, Spurs have been woeful defensively this season. But yeah, Triple City, Arsenal, Trippier, and Shaw. So apart from that, who would I look to go for? I like Estupinian, but he blanks in 25. So really, I'd look at Pedro Porro. I think he's a good option. Or... yeah, Triple City, because, you know, just to give you my kind of transfer plans, I'm looking to get in Ake, for example, in 25, and then looking at a Spurs defender potentially around that time. So that's probably what I'd looked at for you. I'd go for Pedro Porro. Quick question, do we get free transfer for Cancelo if we don't transfer him? Cheers. No, you don't get any kind of additional transfer for Cancelo because he's moved on to Bayern Munich. So, yeah, if you don't transfer him... oh, yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, I think I know what you mean, because like the Trossard kind of loophole, you know, it forces you to get rid of him or whatever. I don't think so, no, because he's going to just be red flagged. He's not available. You know, he's not playing for another Premier League team, basically, and he's not going to break the kind of, you know, 4 players rule, you know, having more than 3 players from a single club in the Premier League. So, no. Basically, you're not going to be forced next week to make a transfer involving Cancelo. So don't worry about that. It's a good question, though. Will Stones be available for Double Game Week? I'm not so sure. Honestly, I'm not so sure. I'm going to check now the latest update that we got from Pep Guardiola, and then maybe afterwards I will be showing you something else. So let's go to Premier injuries and see what the latest is on John Stones. So today he was not ready. I saw it in the first minutes. Maybe he was tired. Today he was not ready. And then what happens? You get injured. So yeah, that's what he said after Man City's 1-0 victory over Arsenal. So yeah, no return date so far, just being assessed. And... yeah, in terms of is he going to be fit in time for Game Week 22, I'd be a bit pessimistic about that, actually. In time for Game Week 23, which is when you mainly want him for, that is a different story, but we just don't know enough about the injury just yet. There might be another update, which I haven't seen yet. If there is, then point me in that direction. I would appreciate it. Kepa to Pope, no. I think Pope is the best goalkeeper in the game, but he's also, what, 0.8 million more expensive than Kepa? And not only that, Kepa doesn't blank in 25, Pope does. I wouldn't do that. I would just keep Kepa, to be honest. Let's see if I can finally get the lineup for you, because you know, this is frustrating sometimes when I can't get the lineup, but there you go. Let's see if I can get it up on screen. Yeah, no. I haven't seen it yet. It's a bit annoying. But yeah, we went through the lineup already. I do trust you lot. Let's see, maybe I think I know who would have posted this then. Let's see, 1 second. Apologies for this. Just trying to get the lineup for you. Yeah, normally whenever there's like a lineup, you know, an early leak or whatever, it pops up on my timeline, but not today, unfortunately. Then again, I'll just wait 2 minutes and United will tweet it, and then there we go. We'll go from there. So yeah, for the next few minutes, I'll just keep on going through this, and no worries. So let's go back to my team. My current team, no transfers made just yet. I'm going to wait for this Carabao Cup semi-final to conclude before finalising anything. KDB or Kane out. This is the thing. I think Kane's a better option than KDB, but KDB has a better fixture in 25, facing Bournemouth instead of Chelsea, and he doubles in 23. Because of that, I'd rather get rid of Kane. Maybe do Kane to Nketiah. Having said that, I still think Kane is a better FPL option, and I wouldn't be surprised if he outscored KDB over the next 5 game weeks, despite all of what I just said. Should you start Edison or Ward this week? I do own Kane. I'd probably still start Edison, but I can understand why you're thinking about that. Thank you, Rock and Roll. Okay, so SofaScore's got it already. I actually had the tab open already. Interesting. Let's see. But is it confirm lineups? Because sometimes they have the provisional ones. Let's see. Yeah. They just put possible lineup. And it includes Rashford, for example. And Rashford, it looks like he's on the bench today. But yeah, I appreciate that. What sites do you use for early lineup news, Dylan? And also, what site is it to plan your FPL team for future weeks? I'll just put a link in the chat right now. So let's see, that should work, right? Let me just double check. I don't want to give you a random link. I think this will be enough. All right, let me put this link here. All right, so the website I use very often, actually, especially in team selection videos, wildcard, and free hits, is this one, fpl.team. Wait, what? Am I dumb? Yeah, I am dumb. I'm very dumb, actually. Apologies for that. I'm going to put it again. Yeah, this is the one. FPL.team, you can visualize future game weeks. I had a feeling that they would have included something like this in the normal FPL website where you could visualize future weeks. They didn't do that, but yeah, that is the website you want to use. In terms of what I use for the early lineups and stuff like that, mainly on Twitter. You know, there'll be some people with inside information who know it, so that's what I mainly use really for that. I sometimes check forums, you know, to see Man City predicted lineups and stuff like that. Some Twitter pages as well that I've shown on stream, but yeah, really, it's predominantly Twitter. If you could choose, would you sell Kane or De Bruyne? I'll be honest, it probably would be Kane, and that's simply because of the double for De Bruyne. If it wasn't for that, I would easily sell De Bruyne. Yeah, Shaw starts great news. Yes, it is, unless he does get injured. That's the thing. Yeah, that is true, Jay. That is true. That's a good point. But like Lisandro Martinez, for example, you know, you could have given Maguire or Lindelof a start, but look, Ten Hag knows better, and a better chance of a clean sheet this way. All right, do we get free transfer for Cancelo? Yeah, we covered that already. Like I said, you won't get a free transfer, so to speak, or you won't be forced to get rid of Cancelo next week, and you won't get an additional transfer either. Botman or James Ward-Prowse? I'd go for Botman, but not a bad idea to go for James Ward-Prowse instead. Could it be an idea to get an Arsenal defender like Gabriel now to anticipate their double rather than get a United defender like Shaw and have to spend more transfers? I still think Arsenal have a better defence than United, but since the restart, United have been very strong defensively, a lot of clean sheets. The thing is with Shaw, though, you're going to miss out on a lot of points, I think, in Game Week 22. I do understand what you're saying, you know, kind of avoiding booking in transfers. I think that's a really good, you know, way to play. Yeah, I think Gabriel's better long-term than Shaw, but having said that, for Game Week 22, I think Shaw will... He could even get a double-digit return. You know, that's how confident I am of one clean sheet at least, maybe some bonus points, and, you know, whatever he gets in the other games, so be it. So, yeah, I think it's a good idea to do that, but I would still try to get Shaw in this week if you can. I got so lucky last game week, transferred Nketiah for his haul. The thing is, though, with Nketiah, he had good underlying numbers. He scored in some games already against Brighton, West Ham, been leading the line well, had a lot of chances against Spurs. He should have scored 1 or 2 goals at least. And he also missed chances against Newcastle, though there were more half chances. So, really, I want to say you're lucky. It's a good transfer. Obviously, the nature of the game against Man United, I'm surprised he got a 13-pointer, but, you know, he is capable of that from time to time. He's done it in the big occasion before against Chelsea away last year as well. So he has it in his locker. -4 Salah to Bruno, I would do it. I think Salah could do well this week, but Bruno should pay that hit off. 9.6 in the bank. Who should I go for? Ferguson and Haaland, the other two. So striker, I'd go for Nketiah. Cancelo would just sit in my team as a red flag if you own him. Exactly that. What else do we have? Is De Gea perfect for next game week? I wouldn't say he's perfect for game week 22, but on paper, you know, on a free hit team, he is in isolation the best goalkeeper in Game Week 22 with 2 great home fixtures. You would back 1 clean sheet at least for Man United. However, I'd rather go for Shaw, Bruno Fernandes and Rashford. So because of that, I'd just rather go for Kepa and also Nick Pope. March and Salah for Mitoma and Bruno for a -4 and bench Almiron. Other two midfielders are Rashford and Martinelli. So look, I still think March is a good option. His finishing has been atrocious, let's be quite real, in the last few games. But getting into some good positions still. Mitoma's the more exciting player. You could say scoring low XG chances or whatever, it's unsustainable. But Mitoma has so much quality that I could see him continuing to do well. Yes, I think long-term it's worth the hit, but I would just start Almiron, avoid the hit from March to Mitoma, and just play it that way, to be honest. I think that's what I would do. You could always get Mitoma in for Game Week 23. The thing is, I can understand why you want to do it now. He's facing Bournemouth in Game Week 22, but yeah, it's just, I'm not so sure. If I had to lean one way or the other, I'd go for it. Go for the -4, get Mitoma in, but also bear in mind, Ananda, Game Week 25 is important, and if you have 6, 7 blank Game Week players already, then getting Mitoma in is only going to add to your problems. I have the same backline as you, except Cucurella. Good thing you don't have him. Trust me, Bueno's better. Is it worth it to start 4 at the back? I'm not going to do it, I think, eventually. So once I make my transfers, I'll probably go to a 3-4-3 and I'd bench Ben White. I don't think a back 4 is necessarily bad this week, you know. Ben White has a decent chance of a clean sheet. Man United defenders look good. Newcastle defenders always look decent, but of course, Bruno Guimaraes being suspended could be, you know, a big blow for them defensively. So yeah, I still think it's worth going for a back 4, but ideally you go for a back 3. Yeah, thank you, Hedge. Yeah, they always tweet it, or any club will tweet it 1 hour before the deadline. I have already kind of missed that, getting really into these questions. So I'll show you the Man United lineup for those of you that aren't aware. So I'll finally get it on screen. All right, so there we go. So thank you, Hedge. Let's bring this up now. This is the Man United lineup, as we talked about earlier, but just to put it on screen, Heaton's in goal, Lisandro Martinez, Bruno Fernandes captain, Fred, Casemiro, Varane, Anthony Shaw, Weghorst, Wan-Bissaka, and Garnacho. So a strong lineup, very strong you could argue, only 3 or 4 changes. The likes of Rashford on the bench is really big news. Sancho's back in the squad, Martial's also on the bench, which might add some headaches for Martial owners, but ultimately I probably would still sell him, to be honest. I think Nketiah could be a great transfer for you over the next few weeks. Decent bench as well, you have to say. Not too much squad depth, but I think in the summer, Man United will start adding some players in and they'll have a really strong squad eventually. But yeah, it's a good lineup. They're going for the kill. They've already got a 3-0 lead in this Carabao Cup semi-final. And should they progress to the final, which is looking very likely, they will blank in Game Week 25, as we've covered already. So I'm going to leave this on screen for a little while longer. Thank you to everyone who pointed me in this direction. Thank you, Goldhead. I appreciate it. Is Mahrez a better option than KDB, says Mandip? At the moment, I think he is. But as you say, you know, with Pep Roulette, Mahrez could easily start suffering soon, and anyone who brings him in will suffer with him too. So I think Mahrez is one of the most nailed-on players right now for Man City, but that could quite easily change, as you rightly point out. Trippier, Shaw, Botman, Lewis, White as defenders. Transfer suggestions, keeping Game Week 25 in mind, and start Mitro or Kane in this game week. I'd still start Kane. Yeah, I'd go for him over Mitrovic. As for your defenders, what transfer plans would I suggest? I think your defensive line looks really good. Going into Game Week 25, I would probably do Botman to Pedro Porro, or I would go to a City defender. Obviously, you've got Rico Lewis now, and you might have a triple up in Man City already, Roy. But I would look to go for a Man City defender or Pedro Porro in the next few weeks. I wouldn't really chop and change too much, you know, right now. Going into Game Week 23, you've already got an Arsenal defender and a Man City defender, but ideally you would have someone like Ake instead of Rico Lewis. Lisandro should be nailed for United. Yes, exactly. Do you think he's an option? Yes, of course I do. The problem is Luke Shaw, Bruno Fernandes and Rashford are the best 3 options for Man United. Then you probably say the likes of De Gea and Lisandro, you know, make up the kind of top 5. But yeah, of course he's an option. Really cheap, can get some bonus points from time to time. But yeah, the problem is there's a lot of good United assets, and those 3 I think is going to be hard to displace, and you might struggle going without one of those, Shaw, Bruno or Rashford. What do you like to do in your free time? Interesting question. I like to, you know, watch movies, watch shows, read books, play video games, go gym, play football, though I haven't done that in a long time. So yeah, those are the kind of things I like to do. Keep the triple captain for a differential captain in future doubles like James, Salah, Son. The thing is, though, why would you want a triple captain, you know, 3 players who ultimately are off form? Heung-min Son has had a dreadful season. I know he scored twice the other day in the FA Cup. Salah, you know, a shadow of his former self, and Reece James is an injury, he's an injury doubt all the time, basically, just coming back from one. I can understand what you're saying there, but even triple captaining Bruno this week is a differential in itself. I think that could gain you massive gains, more so than any of the players you mentioned, to be honest. Yep, I think that move is worth it, switching between Bruno and De Bruyne, and ultimately, you might decide by Game Week 23 that you want to go for Mahrez instead. Is it worth taking a -4 to do Almiron, Kane to Fernandes and Nketiah? Yes, I think it is. I'm very apprehensive about getting rid of Kane. Having said that, Fernandes and Nketiah, I think, should pay off that hit, very easily, I would argue. I'm worried of Varane playing both double gaming fixtures with him starting tonight. Yeah, that is a good point. And in terms of Man United defenders, I think Luke Shaw's the best, followed by Lisandro Martinez right now. If Diogo Dalot, wasn't injured, I think he would have been kind of a certainty. And I would have even ever considered a triple up in Man United with 2 United defenders in Diogo Dalot and Shaw. So yeah, I think you make a really good point there. Play Martinelli or Nonto? Because of the double, I'd probably lean towards Nonto, but even then, I'd be very, very apprehensive about benching Martinelli this week. I would actually bench Mahrez and start Martinelli and Nonto potentially, although that does sound ridiculous with Mahrez's form. So I don't know who to transfer out to Sebastian in Game Week 23, Matoma or Rodrigo, because Rodrigo has good fixtures in Game Week 25 and Matoma will blank. Well, that's the thing though. Why get rid of them in Game Week 23 when you can just get rid of them in Game Week 25? I'd keep Matoma all the way up until Game Week 25, maybe get rid of him, bring him back by the time they double, potentially in Game Week 29. So that's the way I'd go about it. I wouldn't get rid of him before. Yeah, that makes sense, Sebastian. I think Mahrez is a really good player at the moment, really good option. Start Perisic or Almiron? I'd go for Almiron this week for sure. Start Almiron or White? I'd go for Ben White. Start 2, bench 2. Has to start 1 defender. Botman, White, Kane, Mitrovic. I would start Botman and I'd go for Kane. So yeah, that answers your question. Let's go now back to my team. Just a little second, actually. All right, let's go back to my FPL team, where I haven't made transfers yet, of course. Bear that in mind. You will probably see my finalized transfers in the deadline stream on Friday. So in 2 days' time, we're going to be back at it before Chelsea play Fulham in the opener of Game Week 22. Remove Andreas or Almiron? I'd rather get rid of Almiron. When you look at it on paper, who's the better FPL option? There's not much to separate them right now. And also, Almiron blanks in Game Week 25. He's more expensive than Andreas Pereira. And I also like the idea of having a benchable midfielder / attacker. I don't like having 8 attackers in essence and having to bench one of them every single week and probably benching points as a result. Who should I go for, Martinelli or Saka? Definitely Saka right now. Let's see how far behind I am. I probably still am. Okay, we're slowly catching up. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. So Roy said Trippier, Shaw, Botman, Lewis, White as defenders. Transfer suggestions, keeping Game Week 25 man. Yeah, we went through that. So like I said, in terms of defender transfers, I would get in a City defender like Ake or Stones if he comes back from injury. Akanji being the other alternative. And you could also consider Pedro Porro. As for Mitrovic or Kane, I would start Kane. Rashford rested for his 23 points. Wow, if he gets 23 points, that would be by far the best triple captaincy I've ever had. I've had some really bad luck with the chips. So last year, I wanted to use it in Game Week 26 when Salah had that amazing double game week. I can't even remember who he faced there. I think Leeds was part of it. But in the end, I had so many issues to deal with. I had to play the wildcard in 26, so that didn't go according to plan. Then I triple captain Salah in 29. He scored a penalty, then got subbed off due to injury, then came off the bench against Arsenal. And a few years ago, Sadio Mane, I mean, probably the worst luck I've had ever in FPL. Triple captain Mane in the double game week, and he gets subbed off in the 30th or 40th minute against Wolves in a double game week, and that's it. Salah in the end was the one who got the points. So I'm hoping for much better here with Rashford if I go for him, Bruno Fernandes, or Haaland in Game Week 23. Still have Foden and Darwin in my team. Worth holding for the upcoming doubles? Honestly, mate, probably not. Foden doesn't start that often. Darwin Nunez is very erratic finisher. Liverpool are looking dysfunctional and there's a lot of issues surrounding them. Despite the doubles for City in 23 and the doubles that Liverpool should get very soon, I wouldn't go for them. I'd sell them, to be honest. Hi Dylan, start 2 between Almiron, Botman and White for Game Week 22. I'd go for Botman and White and I'd bench Almiron potentially. This is the one thing I dislike about Ten Hag not rotating the squad almost at all. Maybe that just points towards his lack of faith in the squad players like Maguire, who seems out of favour, Lindelof, and all of this. But I do agree with you. Like, I would have liked, if I was a Man United fan, I would like to see a bit more rotation, even if I were going to the game. Hold Almiron for West Ham, Bournemouth, or sell now? Depends who you sell him for. I don't want to sit on the fence there, but if you're selling Almiron to Odegaard, I would do it now. Otherwise, you know, if you're going to someone like Matoma, for example, and you've already got a lot of blank players in Game Week 25, then I just hold Almiron for the next 2 game weeks and then reassess by Game Week 24. Saka and Nketiah this week. I'm getting the other one in Game Week 23. So my kind of gut feeling is I'd still rather go for Saka. I think he's the one I'd go for. Yeah, maybe not all of them, but I'd rest at least 1 or 2. I'd rest Varane because he's injury prone anyway, and I'd also probably rest Casemiro. So kind of have a balance of first team and fringe players. So for example, Lisandro Martinez with Maguire. In the midfield have Bruno Fernandes if you were to go for him, but then bench Casemiro and do something like that basically, rather than benching, you know, the entire back line, but then going for strong midfielders, if you catch my drift. Thank you, Roy. I appreciate it. Good to see you saw the message. That's good. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I'm almost caught up. That's good. And we've got 45 minutes left for kickoff, and that's when I'm probably going to wrap up for sure. But if we keep on getting questions, yeah, we're going to keep on going, basically. Ori says, good week, Dylan. You think Varane would be nailed to start both games in the double? I don't want to get triple United because of the blank and already use Varane and Rashford. That's the thing. You know, Varane is a nailed-on defender, but with him starting today, his injury problems as well, I would be concerned about him in Game Week 22. He might get a rest, but then again, as Goldhead just said, Ten Hag isn't really known for rotating his players, so he could just play all of them, but the problem is he might get injured during one of those games. So my gut feeling is that he will start both games, but him starting today doesn't fill me with confidence at all. Mitro, KDB to Nketiah and Bruno, then next week swap Bruno to City mid. Yep, that's what I'm looking to do. Whether it's KDB or Mahrez, it's going to be one of those for sure, I think. But I think that looks like a solid plan. Want to bench Kane, Martinelli, or Botman? Probably Botman. If I had to pick one, it would be him. Who blanks in Game Week 25? So that is entirely dependent on the Carabao Cup. So Newcastle progressed. They're now in the final. They are going to blank, and the same goes for Brighton, who were their opponents in Game Week 25. And the other blank, it's looking likely that will be Man United, since they're 3-0 up already in the Carabao Cup. They obviously play in around 45 minutes' time. And their opponents, Brentford, would also blank 2 in Game Week 25. So 4 teams would blank. The ones I just mentioned, Brentford, Man United, Brighton, and just forgot, I've got short-term memory, and Newcastle, sorry. Yeah, so those 4 would blank. So bench 1, Kane, Odegaard, Matoma, and Tony. I definitely wouldn't bench Tony or Matoma this week. Yeah, but I wouldn't bench Kane either. Jesus, that's a tough question. Oh my God. Wow. I can't say Kane. It's probably him, but don't bench Kane, honestly, Sebastian. Try to bench someone else, honestly. All of those players have to start for me. Make Botman move now or wait for the deadline? I just wait for the deadline just in case. You know, I'm not saying it will happen, but maybe a Man United player gets injured now, Bruno Fernandes, Luke Shaw, whatever, and then you might want to make a transfer there. So you just never know what could happen. You might as well wait for at least the end of today, or at least the end of this game, and then you can finalize your transfer. Thank you, Chicha, or Chicha? Okay, I'm just dumb. Dan. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I won't forget my water. I'll probably just have a sip now that you mention it. Thank you very much, mate. Are you planning on KDB to Bruno, back to KDB the week after? Yes, or Riyad Mahrez. I discussed this in the team selection video. So once I see the Spurs game, you know, Spurs versus Man City, then I'll reassess. But my current thinking is to go to Mahrez instead. Good question by Aaron. Saka or Mahrez? I think in the long term, Saka's my favourite. So I'd recommend him. However, what I like about going for Mahrez is that it allows you to go for Ben White, Odegaard, and Nketiah up front, which might be the play for your squad. So as a result, and considering Mahrez's form, I'd probably say Mahrez right now and in the short term. But if you just want someone long term, you're not really going for Nketiah anyway, and you're not thinking about those other factors, then Saka's the better option up until the end of the season for me. I want Sabitzer if he performs. Raya, Kim Ne, Frimpong, De Jong, Ara, Vlahovic. I'm guessing Kim J, yeah, from Napoli. Yeah, those will all be good players. And also, I think Mourinho said this, that he wanted Kim J at Spurs, but he didn't have that transfer sanctioned. The thing is, I mean, let's be realistic, not all of those are going to happen. Raya could be signed just because of his ball-playing abilities. He's a good goalkeeper as well in general. But De Jong, I'm not so sure about. Ara, I don't think I think United can do better, to be honest. I think his time has passed. He was, pretty good and promising like 3 or 4 years ago, but hasn't really kicked on from that. Vlahovic is a good goal scorer. I'm not so sure if he would fit Man United per se. But yeah, there's all good players that you mentioned. I think Kim Jae could be a great signing, but then you've already got Varane and Lisandro Martinez. You'd have to bench one of them or tell Kim Jae that, you know what, you're not going to be a nailed-on starter. Good transfers, though. I think those will all be good moves, but not so sure all of them will happen, of course, unless you're Chelsea. What's your bench look like in Game Week 25? Good question. We can go back to it. I think we covered this in FPL.team, but of course, things can change by the time we get there. So in Game Week 25, my bench would be Ward, Botman, Rashford, and Trippier. And, what you see on screen is me making one transfer. I could also do something like this where I get rid of Tony or I get rid of Botman. And if I were to get rid of Botman, maybe I go for Pedro Porro, although he is facing Chelsea. The problem is I don't think he's added to the game right now, or at least FPL.team. So I have to wait to get Pedro Porro in this. Let's see if he's added on. Pedro Porro, where are you? No, he's not in the game right now in FPL.team. But yeah, I could go for Pedro Porro in for Botman or get rid of Tony. That's why, in my situation, it might make more sense, instead of going for Odegaard, to instead go for Nketiah up front for Ivan Toney in Game Week 23. And in that case, I could maybe not use both transfers in Game Week 22 and roll it and have 2 free transfers heading into Game Week 23. So there's a few things I need to weigh up, basically. But ideally, I would have Nketiah for Tony, have a full 11 here, but then it also would mean I would have no Odegaard or Martinelli, and I'd have to change things up a little bit along the way. But yeah, that's how I'm looking at right now for Game Week 25 with my designated transfer plans, getting a Man City defender like Ake, and also potentially getting in someone for Tony or Botman as well to get an 11 out. Or I'll just kind of wrap it up, just say, you know what, 10's enough for me, and I'll just save the transfer and go into Game Week 26 with 2 frees as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things I need to think about, but this looks pretty solid anyway. My only doubt really is having Cucurella still, who's facing Tottenham away in Game Week 25. Welcome, Yaya. Good to see you. Bench Botman or Martinelli? I would bench Botman. Thank you, Junior. Start 2, Mahrez, Mitrovic, Struijk. Well, Struijk has the double game week. I'd start Mahrez and Struijk, and I'd bench Mitrovic, but I'm not a big fan of Leeds defenders, really. I'm just starting him because of the double. I don't see a clean sheet for Leeds against Nottingham Forest or against Man United, to be fair. Dylan, would you captain anyone else apart from Haaland in 23? Yeah, Saka, Mahrez, 2 great choices you mentioned there, or Martin Odegaard. I think those are the 3 I'd look at to challenge Haaland. Maybe De Bruyne as well, but I think you just mentioned the 2 best ones there alongside Odegaard. I'm considering Bruno and Shaw for walking KDB. Honestly, mate, I'd go for it. Then in the weeks to come, you can get rid of them as well and do a switcheroo, but for Game Week 22, it looks great. Who is better, KDB versus Bruno Fernandes for the games until Game Week 24? I would argue Bruno Fernandes. I could see him scoring more points in that time period, so he's my answer. Is De Gea perfect for double game week? We answered that already. Like I said, he's probably the best goalkeeper in Game Week 22 in isolation, but I wouldn't go for De Gea. I'd rather go for Shaw and also Bruno Fernandes and Rashford. I think that's the 3 Man United players you want. So no, he's not perfect for me. KDB, Mitrovic, Martinelli for Bruno, and Nketiah. Mahrez says Spark. Yeah, honestly, I have no problems with that whatsoever. Even if you're getting rid of KDB or Martinelli, who could do well this week, I think that's a good set of moves. Nketiah for Mitrovic or Darwin? I'd rather keep Mitrovic and get rid of Darwin. The downside to what I just said is that Darwin could have doubles very soon, and Mitrovic has some really poor fixtures. I think after, or from Game Week 25 onwards, I'm pretty sure there's a bad run there for Fulham. Do I keep Foden? I wouldn't. I would sell him, despite the double in 23. I'm going to triple captain Bruno, but have Rashford. Yeah, honestly, I see them scoring a similar amount this week. It's going to be really close, and honestly, I think what could separate both of them is the penalties. Rashford took the last one, whilst both of them were on the pitch against Everton in the FA Cup. It was Rashford who took the penalty, and I think whoever gets those pens in Game Week 22, I think that could be the deciding factor in terms of who scores more points, honestly. I know Man United haven't gotten too many penalties recently, especially compared to 2 or 3 years ago, but having said that, yeah, I think Bruno's a good choice. Should we load up on our team with players going deep into the FA Cup? Blank Game Week 25, 28, 32. That's the thing. It's important to have a mixture, and don't be too fussed about that because you also have the wild card. Maybe you have the wild card, but most of us have the wild card still in our back pocket. We could use it around Game Week 29 and then build our teams for not only the blanks that you mentioned, but also the doubles in 29, 34, and 37. So What I would look to do is still have as many of these Man City, Arsenal players as possible, but at times be a bit careful. With Man City, for example, maybe instead of a triple up in the long term, maybe go for a double up. Newcastle as well, for example. I think, yeah, they're already knocked out of the FA Cup, so they're not going to be an issue. Man United, though, I could see them going quite far in the competition. Spurs as well. You know, with some of the key teams like Liverpool and Arsenal already knocked out, they have a real chance of winning it this year. So honestly, it's kind of having that balance, really. And I wouldn't be sacrificing having these really good options before these blank game weeks just because you want to have or be well set up for these blanks that you just mentioned. So it's really important to strike that balance. And that's why I mentioned for game week 25, if you're already well set up for that game week, you can afford to go for a Mitoma and not worry too much about it. Sebastian says who to bench. I think we covered this already. But yeah, who would I bench from that? Trippier, White, Rodrigo, Rashford, Bruno, Rodrigo, Mitoma, Tony and Haaland. Yeah, I wouldn't want to bench Kane either, mate, honestly. I would say bench Ben White, but you don't have enough defenders. You need that defender. So, yeah, it might have to be Harry Kane, but it just doesn't sit right with me, mate. It honestly doesn't. The alternative would be to bench Odegaard, but that could really backfire as well. Golded says Daniel Levy is useless. The amount of players that Spurs could have had or should have signed but haven't because of him is ridiculous. Yeah, and he's quite cunning when you look at it. So he basically signed Pedro Porro on loan now in January, and it's an obligation to buy in the summer. So when we get to the summer, that will count as one of the signings, like Romero was from last year going into this year, and there won't be much activity elsewhere. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of Spurs fans are displeased with him. Do you think Jorginho displaces anyone from the Arsenal team? No. I think he offers competition for places, and he can if he plays really well in training and, you know, just outperforms Jack or Pai, whoever. He has a chance of getting into the team. But right now, I'd say he's just back up for those two. Are there any other United defenders other than Shaw? Lisandro Martinez. You know, Varane's another one, but he's also injury prone, so I'd just rather go for the Butcher. Have you been enjoying any other games on PC or console? Really good question, and yes, the answer is yes. And this Witcher 3 is the game that I played recently. I know the game's like 8 years old, but I just got into it because of the next-gen update. I bought the game like 2 years ago for a really cheap price, never got around to it, and now I've been just playing the heck out of it, and it's one of the best games ever. One of my favourite games of all time. Before that, I was playing God of War Ragnarok and some stuff like that. But yeah, I'm on PS5. And Witcher 3 for me is really good. I've been enjoying Fantasy or Football Manager. Is it Football Manager? Yeah, 23 recently. Unbelievably fun. I remember suggesting it a while back. Yeah, I think you suggested it a few times, and I haven't had a look yet. I think you said at one point it was as cheap as £1. I wasn't able to see that deal. I did search it up. But yeah, I will probably have a look. The thing is, I still like playing, you know, actively playing, even though FM will be obviously much more in depth than FIFA is, for example. What are your plans for Andreas? Probably just to keep. I'm happy to have him as a benchable option in the midfield. Oh, so yeah, I didn't see that. So Rashford won Player of the Month for January. It is deserved, to be fair. Can't really have too many complaints about that. Although Mahrez is probably the other alternative, if I'm not mistaken. I'm wondering who won Manager Month, because there's like 3 or 4 that could have won it. Arteta, Thomas Frank, Unai Emery, I think, has a really good shot of winning it. Welcome, Chelsea Blues. Good to see you. Bruno and Odegaard for Almiron and KDB for a hit, without a hit. I would go for it for a hit. Yeah, I think I would. Almiron could do well over the next 2, but Odegaard will outperform him until the end of the season, and especially over the next 3 or 4 for me. Thank you. Wait, can I call you Echo on Tube? Or whatever. But thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Or Echo on Tube. If you have a message that you want to put forward, then be sure to do so. I sold Almiron for Mitoma. Is that a good move? Yeah, I think so. If you don't have too many blank players in Game Week 25, I have no problems with it whatsoever. I think it's really good. Any news on Ferguson? We can just go to Premier Injuries now and give you an update. So the latest on Ferguson. We'll see in the next days if it's an important injury. So yeah, right now he's just currently being assessed. He's at 25% chance of starting in Game Week 22. But yeah, if you have him and you're not really planning to go for a third forward anyway, I just keep him basically. I know there is a bit of a temptation to go from a Ferguson or Greenwood to Nonto, but I also don't think it's worth it, especially for a -4 hit. But yeah, that is the latest update. I'll highlight it there for you as well. Just let me just get rid of the chat as well for a second, just so you can read it. So Don John asks, Bruno or De Bruyne till Game Week 25? Well, until Game Week 25, I would say KDB. And the reason why is because Bruno is most likely going to blank in Game Week 25 should Man United secure the deal today and get to the Carabao Cup final. And that's, that coupled with Man City having a double in 23 and, of course, Man United double this week, I think that gives the edge to Kevin De Bruyne. If it wasn't for that, it has to be Bruno for me. I think he's the better FPL option at the moment. When are you using your bench boost, Dylan? I haven't set it in stone, and I was kind of talking about this earlier. I'm looking at game weeks like Game Week 34, for example, Game Week 29, and it could just be whenever, maybe a smaller double game week or whenever my bench looks fairly decent. What I do know is that I definitely won't use it during a blank, so Game Week 25, 28, or 32. It could be in any other of the game weeks until the end of the season, but most likely I think Game Week 34 is looking like a really good time to use it. Probably the most likely for me. Hi Dylan, what happens with Cancelo's price now he's left FPL? Is his price frozen? I believe so. And in terms of, transfers, you don't have to get rid of him really because, all he does is occupy a Man City slot, but you won't be forced to transfer him out like you would if you had, 4 players, like Trossard moving to Arsenal. You'd have 4 Arsenal players by keeping Trossard before he moved and all of that stuff. So, yeah, in terms of prices, he's not going to be going up again or going down. Thank you, Goldhead. Thank you very much. And yeah, like he said already, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so. And also be sure to smash the like button. We're trying to get this to over 100 likes. Let me actually have a quick look because I haven't seen it over the last hour, actually, in terms of how we're looking. But yeah, we're literally only 17 likes away. We've got over 140 people watching. So be sure to keep on smashing the like button and getting this to the new milestone. And we're getting ever closer towards 18k. And it's all thanks to you lot. So thank you. Let's now go to more questions. Ekon Chu says, own March, Mahrez, Martinelli, Odegaard, Rashford mid, and Haaland, Kane, Tony. Sell 1 mid for Bruno, 6.7 million in the bank, and bench 1. Who to sell bench? Sell Martinelli and bench Mahrez. Game Week 23, Tony to Nketiah. Yep, that looks really good. I like that transfer 23. No problems with it. So, what would I do? I would sell March to Bruno. Think of it now. Yep, you have more than enough money for that, so that's no issue. And in terms of who to bench, it probably would be Mahrez. Yep, exactly right. So March to Bruno, bench Mahrez this week, and maybe in Game Week 23, if you are willing, you could do Martinelli to Saka, even if it requires a -4 here. I don't think it's the worst transfer in the world, but yeah, I think that's the way to go, mate. Thank you, Godhead, for the shout out as well. Once again, I appreciate it. Bench Kane or Martinelli? Oh, I think Martinelli could do really well against Everton, but having said that, I just wouldn't want to bench Kane. Honestly, wouldn't. Oh. I'd probably bench Kane, but very reluctantly. How about The Last of Us game and TV series? I played The Last of Us game when I got a PS4, so that was like in 2015. Yeah, I really liked it. I platinumed the game and everything. I played it multiple times. I wasn't a big fan of part 2. I platinumed that as well, but I didn't like it as much as the first part. As for the show, I think so far it's been, very good and faithful. There were some key changes in episode 3, and I do think the game version was better, in my opinion, in terms of the Bill and Frank story. In terms of that story in particular, it also obviously has more depth and, time to, breathe in episode 3 compared to the video game. But in terms of how the events happen, Bill and meeting Joe and Ellie and stuff like that, I do think it's better done in the game. I do prefer that dynamic between Ellie and Bill, for example. But still, it's well done. My favourite episodes, though, were episodes 1 and 2, probably episode 2 being my favourite so far. Nketiah, Ake with a hit, or Mitrovic and Gabriel says WAP. I wouldn't get Ake in for a hit right now. I would get him in for Game Week 23, but not for a hit in Game Week 22. And yeah, I would get Nketiah Ake, but don't get Ake now. I would do it in Game Week 23, like I said. I'm keeping Almiron. Is it a good choice? I don't think it's a bad one. I think it's a decent choice. He's got some great fixtures coming up over the next 2, and you can always get rid of him after the Bournemouth game in 23, where I could see him doing really well. Yeah, the £1 deal requires a bit of effort to do. You basically sub to Xbox Game Pass for £1, then cancel it, but you still get the game for free. Fair enough. Yeah, that's the thing, though. I don't think I qualify because obviously I have a PS5, and unless Xbox is linked to PC or whatever, yeah, I just don't think I could do that. So it's actually 1/3 of the full real sale price, which is why I do it. Nonetheless, I still highly recommend it, as I think it's got the kind of detail that I think you'd enjoy. Yeah, no, I think you could be right. You know, sometimes, you know, for example, Witcher 3 that I mentioned, you know, when I first played it, I thought it's too overwhelming. I'm not really sure it's my type of game. But once you get into a game, if it's a well-crafted one, you know, you start to enjoy it a lot. I need to choose 3 or 4 Arsenal players: Nketiah, White, Martinelli, Odegaard. Which 3 are better? Thanks. Odegaard, I'd say Saka, and I would go for then either Ben White or Nketiah. It just depends if you want to go for a triple up in Arsenal attack or go for 2 attackers and 1 defender. My preference overall is to go for 1 defender, because I think Arsenal have one of the best defenses in the league, and then go for 2 attackers. So my favourite 3 Arsenal players overall is Saka, Odegaard, and an Arsenal defender like Ben White, or maybe right now you could consider Zinchenko, Saliba, or Gabriel. So that is my answer. I do like Nketiah, though. I have to say that if you decide to go for him in a triple up in Arsenal attack, I have no issues with that whatsoever. I think it looks fantastic. Bench Mitro or Martinelli? I think that's a simple one for me. I'd bench Mitrovic. Should I triple captain Rashford? In my opinion, it is best to triple captain in Game Week 22 or 23. So your options really are Rashford and Bruno Fernandes in 22 and Erling Haaland in 23. Or if you decide to go a bit rogue, Riyad Mahrez, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard. I'm looking at triple captaining Rashford in Game Week 22, so I would recommend it naturally. Fernandes for De Bruyne or Mahrez? I'd rather get Fernandes in for De Bruyne. Mahrez is more in form. He's also cheap, although that doesn't really mean much right now. So yeah, I'd get Fernandes in for De Bruyne right now. Trippier, Cher, Cancelo, White, and Diop. Who should I downgrade Cancelo to? Well, for Game Week 23, I would go to an Arsenal defender or Man City defender, that's for sure. So Ake or, you know, any Arsenal defender of your choice. If you like the fact that Ben White is subbed off early and you can get early clean sheets being banked, I would go for him. But that could also be a double-edged sword, like I said. So, look, what I would recommend is getting short in for Cancelo in Game Week 22. Then in 23, I would then bring in, for example, well, yeah, you've already got White, by the way. I would then bring in a City defender for Diop. So maybe Ake. That's what I would do in your situation, Nigel. And then going into Game Week 25, you could consider Pedro Porro or maybe even another Man City defender if you don't have a triple up already. So is triple up at Man City needed? I don't think it's needed. Definitely not. But I would try to go for at least 2 Man City players. And yeah, Mahrez in your midfield looks fantastic. That looks completely fine. Like I said in your situation, though, Sebastian, I think it was you. Yeah, I think you mentioned, was it March earlier? It might have been someone else. But yeah, your midfield looks well stacked right now. Just bear in mind, if you're well set up for 22, 23, and 25, that's going to be the big concern going into the future. But yeah, all looks good. You don't need to triple up in Man City, though. Hey, mate, I already have White and Martinelli. As Odegaard or Nketiah the better option for third Arsenal? Odegaard still. I think you'll get more bonus points and naturally more bonus points as well compared to Nketiah. Is Bruno worth a -4? I think so, even if you're only keeping him for 1 week. Amron to Odegaard for a hit. So I'm probably going to do the move for free. For a hit, I'm trying to think if I would do it in my own situation. Probably not. I'd just start Amron or just start Ben White in my case. So yeah, the thing is, I think Odegaard could do really well against Everton. You know, he's done really well against the teams in the bottom 3 all season. Whether it was Wolves, whether he was facing West Ham, whoever it was, he did really well. So ultimately, you're probably going to make that move in Game Week 23, and you could do it for free by then, but you also might have other transfer plans anyway. I would do it for a hit, but just bear in mind Almiron could do really well over the next 2 game weeks. I'm only 40% through for The Last of Us, brought over 4 years ago. I really should finish the game. Yeah, it's kind of... So Naughty Dog have this kind of style of cinematic experiences with Uncharted and The Last of Us. So it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it also does appeal to a lot of people. There's a reason why Last of Us and Uncharted are really big franchises. Yeah, I think once you give it time, maybe play an hour or so, you know, consecutively, I think then you'll start to get into it. And it has a bit of a slow start, arguably, but it just gets better and better as you go through the story. Have you considered reviving your gaming videos? So yeah, I have a few gaming videos on the channel, a Star Wars guide. I also have an Uncharted Rage, of course, a Rocket League short too. Potentially, you know, when I first started the channel, I think I had like a few different plans, you know, doing FPL videos, doing football videos covering Arsenal, and also gaming stuff. And I did a bit of everything, but I was kind of seeing that more people were interested in my FPL stuff, and that's why I kind of veered more towards that. But yeah, it's a possibility in the future. Also covering films and shows. I'm open to that sort of thing. At the moment, I'm going with FPL, and we'll see where it goes. Transfer plan says Junior, Game Week 22, Mitro plus KDB to Nketiah Bruno. Game Week 23, Almond to Mahrez. For Game Week 25, I can only field 9 players. I'm not that fussed about that. I think that looks fantastic. As long as you have the key assets in Game Week 25, that's the main thing. I think that looks really solid. And I agree with all your transfers. Almiron does play Bournemouth in Game Week 23 and could do well, but Mahrez has the double and is a better FPL option right now. So, yeah, I would go with it. Can I transfer Cancelo without using a transfer? No. If you get rid of him, it will count as one of your transfers. Thank you, Stephen. How do you have those shirts in FPL? I'll just give you the link, but it's basically a Chrome extension. It's a very commonly asked question because it's not every day you see this, but it's very easy to get. So let me just type it in on Google. I think I've got the link already. Yeah, so check the link I'm going to put in the live chat right now. And yeah, just add it to your Chrome extension. Add it to your extension. Or add it to your browser, and then, yeah, it'll work. I don't think it works with Safari, but it should work with Brave, Google Chrome, and stuff like that. Start Botman or Dallo. That's the problem, though. I don't think Dallo's in the squad, is he? That's the big issue with him. I'd probably start Dallo. Sorry, Botman as a result. But if Dallo is in the squad and I'm wrong about that, then obviously I'd have to reconsider that. But I just don't see him starting both games. One start maximum, and even then, just not so sure. Any good sites for in-depth analysis metrics? Well, I mainly use Fantasy Football Hub, but you do have to subscribe to them. Apart from Fantasy Football Hub, stats, I use a variety of free sites as well, like SofaScore, sometimes for research, you know, for some specific figures in terms of XG, you know, shots, goals, assists, and stuff like that. Kind of noticing patterns as well in terms of clubs and players. So yeah, I kind of use those sites, but SofaScore, I wouldn't class as in-depth, to be fair. There's also a few others that I see from time to time, like FBref, I think it is. Might have said that wrong, but that's another one that's very common as well. I already have De Gea, Fernandes, and Rashford. That's fine. I'd stick with that three, to be fair. I wouldn't make transfers when you have those three involved, so that's completely fine. Get Bruno instead of Salah for a hit? I would. I think Salah can do well this week, like I said earlier, but I think it's worth the hit. Mahrez and Haaland from City, yep. And if I were to add a third, it would be Ake probably right now, or another City defender like Kanji. Stones was my favourite before he got injured. He's been in great form, but yeah, that's a problem with him. He is injury prone. Saliba or Gabriel White for you? I still like White the most, but if you've got value tied up in Saliba, just keep him. I don't think it's worth switching from one to the other, but I'm guessing you don't have any of those and you want one. So it just really depends. Ben White is a double-edged sword, as I said multiple times over the last week or two, and that is the big issue with him. He can sometimes, you know, give you that 8-pointer by being subbed off early, but also give you a 0-1-pointer because he's subbed off early. So yeah, Zinchenko's looking really good too. He's got the most attacking threat in terms of assist potential, and also I'd say in terms of bonus points with the amount of passes he makes in the midfield, I think that really works in his favour. Right now, I'd go for Zinchenko, but he's also a fairly injury-prone player, so to speak, or he does pick up quite a lot of knocks. So when are you going to do a video on Champions League Fantasy? Could do one tomorrow, and if it isn't done tomorrow, then I'm looking to do it over the weekend. There's definitely going to be a latest draft video over the next week. Then there's going to be a team selection video closer to the deadline, which is the 14th of February, Valentine's Day. And then there'll be the deadline stream on the day, of course, of the games. Do you think West Ham's second half season top 11 charge will be successful? Well, I think West Ham have far too much quality to go down, but it also depends on the manager, you know, and David Moyes has kind of bought himself a bit more time, but, you know, a few other losses, even just one or two more losses now, and he's gone, and then you can get a managerial bounce and that'll be enough to stay up. I think West Ham could definitely do enough to get into the top 11 or even top 10, but it will take a lot. You know, if I were to predict a finishing position for West Ham now, it's probably between 12th and 14th. Start Cucurella or Mitrovic? I would go for Mitrovic. I'd back Fulham to score more than Chelsea keeping a clean sheet. When is Felix back? That is a good question. I'm pretty sure if he's not back already, he's going to be back for Game Week 23. I'm going to double check that for you because it feels like so long ago now they got, you know, he made his debut and then got suspended. So let me just double check that very quickly. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. So Joao Felix, yeah, he's still red flagged. So he is going to be back in Game Week 23, it looks like. Game week 11. Yeah. So he's back for the West Ham fixture on the 11th of February. So he's suspended for Fulham at home and he's back against West Ham. So wait, so he made his debut against Fulham. Yeah, so it's a 3-match ban because it was deemed as dangerous play. Yeah. If it wasn't, it would have been just 2 games. So yeah, he's back for game week 23. Joey says, quick question, if I may. Bench Kane, Botman or Gabriel? I'd bench Gabriel, actually, from those 3. Would you take Martial out for Nketiah for a hit? It is risky with Martial being in the squad, but I probably would, actually. Thank you, Junior. I appreciate it as always. LH, welcome. Would you do any of the 2 below moves for a hit in game week 23? Robertson to Ake, Martinelli to Odegaard. I wouldn't do... If I were to make one, oddly enough, it would be Martinelli to Odegaard. But honestly, like you said, I'd probably just not do either. Get Martinelli out for Odegaard in game week 23 and also Ake, actually. So save those transfers for next week. I wouldn't do it now. I don't see City keeping a clean sheet. I think actually Robertson has a better chance on paper of keeping one. And as for Martinelli Odegaard, it could go either way in game week 22. But in the long term, I'd rather have Odegaard. So yeah, I think we're on the kind of same wavelength there. I would watch you play FIFA. Honestly, mate, I've kind of lost interest in that franchise. And back in the day, I played it much more. And I also raged a lot. And it's not for good viewing. Or maybe it is, depending on how you see it. Cancelo starts for Bayern already. Damn. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Bayern defensively. But I think in the Champions League, they've been very solid this season. He could be a great UCL fantasy asset. But they are facing Paris Saint-Germain. Let's not forget that. When am I going to make my transfers? As soon as the United game is done, you know, between then and the deadline, I'm going to make my transfers. But I'm not going to make it now. It will be definitely after the Man United game, just in case. I'll probably say, yeah, Thursday or Friday is when I'll finalise my moves. What are you doing, Dylan? Well, currently I'm doing the stream, to be fair, if that's what you're asking. Man City will win the Premier League. I hope not, but they are still my favourites to win it as well. Thinking Cancelo, Mahrez to Shaun Fernandes, next week Fernandes to KDB. Yes, I think that looks really good. Or you could get Mahrez back in, Eric. He's still, on current form anyway, the best Man City option besides Haaland. What to do with Almiron? So I would sell to an Arsenal asset, like Saka or Odegaard, or maybe even Riyad Mahrez in game week 23. Otherwise, I'd be happy to keep him for the next 2, then sell ultimately, heading into the blank in 25. Start Mitrovic, Andreas or Bueno? I'd start Mitrovic. Which inter-defenders are you going with? Dumfries and Gosson seem to both not be first choice post-World Cup over Di Marco, and Darmian, both are cheap, so could be good value, but worry about nailedness. Yeah, that is a good point. Skriniar as well. Obviously, he's going to be moving to PSG in the summer. That is a good question you posed there. I currently don't have any inter-defenders in my draft in UCL Fantasy, and I'll be discussing my draft very soon, but... if I were to go for one, it probably... That is a good choice. That's a good question that you posed there. Normally it would be Dumfries, and it probably still will be him. You know, yes, he might not be nailed in Serie A, but I think he will get the minutes and the starts in the Champions League. But you make a good point there. I'll be making more research into Milan. They're one team that I haven't really, you know, considered much anyway in the Champions League. But yeah, that is a good question you put, and I'll be addressing this over the next week with the streams and also with the videos too. Thank you, Joey. I appreciate it as well. Play Robertson or White? I'd play White just because Arsenal have a better defence. However, I would argue Liverpool have the better fixture. You know, Everton at home to Arsenal. New manager bounce of Sean Dyche. Could be a problem there for Arsenal. So now we know that Shaw is back. Yeah. And, you know, even if he wasn't starting today, I was fairly optimistic about him being available in Game Week 22. Need a 5 million midfielder. You know, if I may, Mitoma, but he's 5.1. Yeah. If it has to be 5 million and below, I think Andreas Pereira will suffice, to be fair. Dumfries' form especially has been extremely poor post-World Cup. I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of Dumfries. He's always capable of these big returns. He did it against the USA in the World Cup, and the Champions League, he did it against Victoria Pilsen, I think, this year. You know, he has been a good fantasy asset in the past. But yeah, I'm not too surprised by that. I just know with Inter Milan, I mainly know about Lautaro Martinez doing really well. I think he's got, what, 7 goals or 6 goals in his last 8 games and 1 assist. But yeah, I will look into that with the Inter defenders. It's a good point that you raised there. I have Isak. What to do? I'm not a big fan of him anyway, but he's not a bad option. I will admit, he's not a bad option. Having said that, with the fixtures coming up, you may want to keep, then look to sell ahead of Game Week 25. But then again, you may also want someone like Nketiah for the double in 23. So if you don't have a triple up in Arsenal already, I'd probably do Isak to Nketiah. Wan-Bissaka rather than Shaw, not for me. I think Wan-Bissaka is a good option right now with Diogo Dalot still out, but Shaw is the go-to Man United defender for me. Then you've got the likes of Lisandro Martinez too. Wan-Bissaka's fine as well, to be fair. The amount of tackles he makes could be really good for the bonus points. Bench White or Botman? At the moment, I'm benching White, so that would be my answer. Just bear in mind, though, that one thing to consider since, when I've kind of discussed this in my team selection video, is that Bruno Guimaraes is suspended now for Newcastle, and that could reduce the probabilities of a clean sheet for the team over the next few weeks. What transfers are you doing, Dylan? Bruno Fernandes in for KDB is looking likely, and the other one could be Odegaard for Almiron. Or I could just make one transfer, bring Bruno in, and then make the other moves going into Game Week 23 and beyond. So that would include Mahrez in for Bruno Fernandes again, and continuously having 2 free transfers every single week. So that is what I may look to do. But yeah, my plan is to have Odegaard for Game Week 23 or Bukayo Saka and Bruno Fernandes in time for this double in 22. Gabriel, Shaw, Botman, Trippier, start 3. Definitely start Trippier. I would go for Shaw. I mean, he's got the double, of course. You have to start him. I would probably go for Botman over Gabriel. Reports going around that Rodrigo Moreno could be injured. Yeah, I've seen a few people mentioning it today in the stream. I haven't seen it actually. So yeah, I'm not sure what the source is. If you've got a link, be sure to drop it in the chat and we can go over it very quickly. Around which game week do you think Nketiah will lose his place? Well, I think by the beginning of next month is when Gabriel Jesus should be back in the squad, but that doesn't mean he will be back in the starting 11. So what game week? Maybe game week 27, 28 is when I think Nketiah could lose his spot. Let me actually go through the fixtures very quickly. So kind of giving a timeline on this, the way I think he'll pan out. Yeah, game week 27, 28, I think is when he could lose his spot. But with the way he's playing, the goals he's getting, I think he's got a good chance of competing and, putting up a good fight against Jesus. Inter won yesterday against Atalanta, but Dumfries was poor yet again. Yeah, I think Lautaro got an assist there. And that's how I was aware of that. But yeah, like I said, with the Inter defenders, it's interesting because normally Gosens and Dumfries are the best options fantasy-wise, the most offensive. Can Cancelo play in the Champions League for Bayern after starting in it with City? Yes, he can. I think they changed the rule around 2020, if I'm not mistaken, or no, 2019. So it was the year that Coutinho went to Barcelona and I think Aubameyang went from Dortmund to Arsenal and he was cup-tied in the Europa League. I think it was it? Yeah, and then Aubameyang couldn't play against Atletico Madrid in the semi-finals. After that year, they changed the rulings and you are able to play for 2 teams in the same, in the Champions League in the same season. Worth taking a -4 for Cancelo and Mahrez to Shaw and Fernandes, or just one of them free? I would do both of them, mate, Eric. I think it's worth the transfers, and you can always bring Mahrez in for free in Game Week 23. Bench Cucurella, Martinelli, or Mahrez? I would bench Cucurella. But then again, if you think Cucurella will keep a clean sheet, or Chelsea will, then it makes sense if you want to start him. But I honestly would bench him, honestly. Thoughts on Rodrigo? I think it's a decent 1-week punt, but there are rumours that he's injured. So let's wait and see how true that is. Bench free, Botman, me, Kane, Martinelli, March, Tony, White. Only 2 defenders. Only 2 defenders. Oh, so you need to start defender? Yeah, Botman. Very simple there. And so I would bench Ben Mee. I would bench White and maybe bench Ben. Maybe I'd bench March despite his fixture against Bournemouth. Shall we go for Enzo? He's a good player, but he's not really what I consider as a fantasy asset. So, no. He's a wait and see, if anything. The Chelsea player I'm really looking at is potentially Mudryk from an FPL perspective. And to top it off, Darmian, Inter's other right wing back scored. Yeah, that won't be... that won't play in Dumfries' favour too much. Kind of odd, really, Inter Milan with these wing backs over the years. They had Hakimi, of course. Now they've got Darmian, Di Marco, and all these players, Dumfries, so that should be interesting. Hey mate, been a while since I watched, and I must say you've evolved. Been here since the Faceless days. Wish you the best. Oh, thank you. It's good to see you once again there, mate. And yeah, a lot has changed. I think there was a lot of clam at one point just to, show, on the camera and stuff. And I think it has helped a little bit, or it has added something else to the stream, but Yeah, I think I got a comment the other day. It was quite funny, saying that I look worse with the beard. I mean, it's completely out to people's opinions there. Bruno for De Bruyne? Yes, I'm looking to do something similar as well. Casemiro for Almiron? I actually mentioned Casemiro as a decent FPL option for Game Week 22, but in the long run, I would rather go elsewhere. So instead of Almiron, I would maybe go for Odegaard, Saka, Mahrez, even Matoma. I think those 4 options would be better than Casemiro. Yeah, Cancelo's on loan, that is true, but he should still be available to play. There might be something in his contract where he can't play against City, should he play against them, but I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be able to play for them, unless I'm missing something. Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much, and I hope you're doing well too. Nketiah to Kane and -4 Bruno to Martinelli. I'm guessing it's the other way around. I would do Martinelli to Bruno. Nketiah Kane, maybe not this week, even though Nketiah has the better fixture. But yeah, the -4 is worth it. I would go for it. But you could also just get Nketiah in for free next week or take the hit next week, because I think Kane will score a similar amount to Nketiah in Game Week 22. I don't think Cancelo can play against Parent Club. Yeah, that's not a surprise there. But in terms of overall, obviously Bayern play PSG. Cancelo should be available for that. So it's only an issue if Bayern come up against City. Defender Liverpool, Robertson or Darwin Nunez? Liverpool are awful defensively, but at the same time, Darwin Nunez has been a very poor finisher since the restart. Who would I rather have? Probably Darwin Nunez, but even then, I'd look to sell both at the moment. For Game Week 22, I think Robertson scores more points. He has a better chance of a clean sheet compared to Darwin scoring, but in the long term, I would argue Darwin Nunez is a better option, but honestly not a big fan of either right now. Thank you very much, LH. Thank you very much. Eric as well. Not so sure about that, to be fair. I mean, yeah, when I do shave, it does look really weird. I look far too young. I look like, I don't know. I don't know what I look like, to be fair. I currently have Mahrez, Saka, Rashford and Odegaard. Would change to bring in Fernandes or keep as is. Yeah, what I would do potentially is Mahrez to Bruno, and then get Mahrez back in, Damien, ahead of 23. Yeah, I think that's the way to go for you. Thank you, Mandip. Always a pleasure to see you. Matoma in for Almiron and Salah out for Fernandes for a -4. Yeah. I do think Almiron could do well again in the next 2 game weeks. And also bear in mind, Matoma blanks in 25 alongside Almiron. But Salah to Fernandes is a really good move. And yeah, I like Matoma too, to be fair. No, keep the beard, they are wrong. Look, that's why it's all subjective, to be fair. Anthony rather than Bruno? No. I think there's a big difference between the two. I think Bruno's far more likely to get returns. Of course, Anthony has quality and he could prove it in this double game week or even today, but I'd rather go for Bruno Fernandes. Thoughts on Nonto as a differential? I already have 3 United players, and do you think 1 Leeds player is enough? Honestly, I'm not a big fan of Leeds assets in general. Even Rodrigo, I think you can go without him. And my issue with going for these Leeds assets is that, you might be using a free transfer taking hits when you could go for Arsenal players who double in 23, have great long-term fixtures. You could also go for a Man City midfielder like Mahrez. So I like Nonto for his price. I also like how he plays in general. He's a really good prospect. But do I like him a lot as an FPL asset? Not really. And you could also go for Nketiah instead. So honestly, you don't need to go for these Leeds assets, in my opinion. De Gea to Ramsdale or keep him? Well, there's no reason to... I'm guessing it's the other way around, because you wouldn't get rid of De Gea with a double game week unless you want to get Luke Shaw in and do things that way. I wouldn't make a goalkeeper transfer if you can. I think both of them are fine as is until the end of the season, you could argue, but certainly until game week 30. Kane or Mahrez on the bench? I would rather bench Mahrez, but of course Man City would be the favourites heading into that game. Just bear in mind that in the last 3 meetings in that stadium, Spurs have won all 3 games with an aggregate score of 5-0. UEFA rules allows Cancelo to play City. Okay, fair enough. Ayub, fair enough. Thank you very much for that. I'm guessing that's only a Premier League thing then, or a league thing. Thank you, Damien. Bruno for De Bruyne. Yep, I think that's a really solid and sensible transfer. I'm looking to do it myself. Triple captain, sure. I think you could do well and get a double-digit return, so it's not a bad move there. It's just my preferences with Bruno and Rashford and the attackers. I could see United conceding in one of the games at least, but Shaw's a fine option for sure. Great stream, Dylan. I will switch to the Barca game. Yep, thank you, Abhishek. I'll see you very soon, maybe on Friday for the deadline stream. We'll be wrapping up fairly soon as well. Yep, see you on Friday as well, Joao. Let's watch the Carabao Cup semi-final, and also any of you watching Barcelona. Odegaard for Mahrez. Yeah, for this week, it looks like a good move, but then you would also want Mahrez for Game Week 23. So maybe get Odegaard in for Mahrez and then get Mahrez in for another midfielder like Almiron in 23. You could consider that. But honestly, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that transfer is, absolutely essential. Steve says, Martial to Nketiah and Salah to Fernandes for a -4. I have free Man United and can get free Man City next week for Almiron on a free. Yeah, Martial to Nketiah I will do. Salah to Fernandes -4. Fantastic. And then, that looks really solid. I'm guessing for Almiron, you'd be getting Mahrez or something. But, yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Steve. I think those transfers look fantastic. Tech puts his round of 16 draft for UCL Fantasy. And, of course, we'll discuss this in the deadline stream on the 14th of February. So, in less than 2 weeks' time. Haaland, second captain. Osimhen, I saw his goal the other day. Absolutely fantastic against Roma. Mbappe, Bellingham, João Mario, Vinicius, Kvaratskhelia, KDB, Di Lorenzo, James, Grimaldo, Darmian, DiMarco, Vlachodimos, and Edison. Really solid draft. I actually have a really similar team. I just don't have any of the Inter defenders. Kind of a spoiler there. Don't have Reece James, and also a bit. I don't have Osimhen, for example, and Vlachodimos, but the rest is actually very similar. Yeah, looks like a really solid draft. With Inter Milan, I wouldn't be that convinced of a clean sheet, though. That's the thing. I think Porto could do pretty well there. I've actually got Taremi, just as a spoiler alert, funnily enough, at the moment. And I could see Porto, maybe not progressing, but scoring 2 or 3 goals across the 2 legs for sure. So, yeah, really solid draft. Obviously, we've got some differences in our thinking, but you've got a really solid draft. I think the double into defense could work in your favor if you're backing them to go through and keep a clean sheet, but I'm not so sure of the clean sheet there for them, if I'm being quite frank, but really solid. Yep, not too sure about the double into wing-backs, but they're cheap, and into wing-backs are usually very attacking. That is true, even under Conte, of course, and even now with the current manager. Yeah, I probably would look elsewhere. Maybe a Man City defender, although you have Edison already. Even Simikan, who was injured recently, but is coming back, and I think he should start in the next game. He hasn't blanked in any game this season, so despite facing City, he's another one to consider. I can see why you're going for Inter defenders, because there's not many standout defenders right now, especially with João Cancelo not being, a factor in Man City anymore. He's now at Bayern facing PSG. So it's not a bad shout. It's not a bad shout at all. Kane, Haaland, Tony, who to start? Well, from those, I would start Haaland and Tony, but benching Kane doesn't sit right with me. Best formation for Game Week 22, probably a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2, I think could be the formation. Who would you have in your wildcard team? I've discussed this in the best wildcard team video, so be sure to check that out. Everything's exactly the same because, as predicted, Man United and Newcastle reaching the final. So the repercussions for Game Week 25 are the same as it looks like it's going to be in the end. So yeah, in terms of my wildcard team, I'd probably still stick with someone like Kepa in goal, Ward as well as the backup. I'd go for Trippier, maybe stick with a Newcastle defender like Botman, Luke Shaw, Arsenal defender, maybe Zinchenko this time instead of Ben White. But yeah, everything would be pretty much the same. Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, Odegaard, Riyad Mahrez as well. I think everything else is pretty much, there's not much that would change. Maybe just Zinchenko in for Ben White or another Arsenal defender, basically. Views on Raya. As an overall goalkeeper, I think he's decent, very good distribution, can make some fantastic saves. In terms of FPL, I wouldn't buy him in right now. Blanks in 25. If Man United get the job done today and reach the Carabao Cup final, and I'm not really that optimistic about a clean sheet in Game Week 22 necessarily. I think Kepa's a better option, not to mention Nick Pope in the long term, and you could even consider David De Gea or Ramsdale and stuff like that. So yeah, in FPL, I would rather go elsewhere. Thank you, Tech, and obviously we'll discuss this more, in the future UCL fantasy videos and streams. Who to captain, Rashford, Bruno, Haaland, or Kane? I would rank it Rashford first, Bruno second, Haaland third, and Kane fourth, but I don't mind, triple captaining or captaining Bruno as well. My midfield is Mitoma, March, Rashford, Bruno, Martinelli, and Odegaard. I like it. I would get rid of March, though. Maybe not in Game Week 22, but in Game Week 23, I would get rid of him. Maybe go to Mahrez. I think that could be the play there. Is a bench boost needed? I have Raya, Ake, Burn, Trippier, Odegaard, Bruno, Rashford, Mitoma, Saka, Kane, Haaland, and on the bench, De Gea, Lewis, Dunk, Nonto, and Saliba. It is a good squad you have, and I can see why you'd want a bench boost. Yeah, the thing is, so really, the way I look at with a bench boost, your 4 worst players. So it'd be Raya on your bench. You could argue Lewis or maybe Burn. Doesn't really matter. It is a solid bench. I could see you getting 10 plus points. And that's the really important thing. If you get 15 points for your bench boost, I think you've done well. And you can do it with your squad. So is it needed? No. Can you do well with a bench boost? Yeah. And, if you play it, I could see you doing pretty well with it. Prefer on the 4.6 million Man United defender? It would be Lisandro Martinez. Would you take a hit for Salah, KDB to Bruno? I would, yeah. How would I play it? If I had both Salah and KDB, I'd get rid of KDB for Bruno. And then you could potentially get rid of... Well, that's the thing, actually. You would save transfers. No, in your situation, it's different. I would get rid of Salah for Bruno. I think Salah could outscore KDB in Game Week 22, but you also would be booking in a transfer by getting rid of KDB now for Bruno and then getting KDB back in for 23. So actually, in your case, it would make sense to get rid of Salah. Yeah, Car, I would go for Lisandro Martinez if you were looking for a cheap Man United defender. Thank you, Sebastian. Already an assist for Cancelo, really? Wow, that didn't take long. KDB to Bruno, using free transfers from this week, I would have 1 blank in 25. Very similar to me. I would do it. I think that looks spot on. Odegaard versus Saka. I think Odegaard's better because he's got 18 bonus points compared to Saka's 9. What Saka has in his favour is he's on penalties. I think that could be a really big kind of a difference maker. But from open play, when you compare the underlying numbers, none of them are particularly that great. It's actually very similar. Odegaard's cheaper, gets more bonus points, more double-digit returns as a result. So he is my preference. Ideally, you'd have both, and then maybe Nketiah or an Arsenal defender. Thank you, Invixity, and I hope to see you in the next stream as well. Bjorn says, who to bench with a 3-man backline? Botman, Shaw, Zinchenko, Trippier, or Vestergaard? I'd definitely bench Vestergaard. So I would start Shaw, Trippier, and probably Botman. I don't mind starting Zinchenko, by the way, but that's the way I'd go about it. I'd definitely bench Vestergaard, and I'd probably bench Zinchenko too. So that about covers it. If you've got any more questions, then you can leave them actually in the comment section here or for the stream on Friday. So not long left for the deadline in Game Week 23. Enjoy the Man United, 22 by the way. I'm getting ahead of myself there a little bit. Enjoy the game right now in the Carabao Cup semi-final, Man United versus Nottingham Forest. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and smash the like button. And we're trying to get to 18,000 subscribers and we're getting closer to that milestone. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, Dylan_RCM on Instagram, and check the links in the description below for the Patreon, patreon.com/DylanRCM, the Discord server, the FPL League, and to become a channel member by clicking the join button. For as little as £3 per month, you can get early access to my videos and also get access to all my team reveals, even if I'm trying to prevent mass copying and not showing my team in UCL Fantasy, for example, which I might do just to kind of give you a little heads up there. But thank you very much to everyone for tuning in. If there is one more question right now, I might answer it very quickly. Neil says, my 11, Pope, Saliba, Trippier, Shaw, Odegaard, March, Rashford, Saka, Mahrez, Kane, Haaland, bench, Stones, Mitrovic, Struijk. Should I bring Struijk in? If yes, then for whom? That's the thing. If I'm being completely honest with you, I don't see Leeds keeping a clean sheet against Forest or United, so I don't think you have to really force him in. If you were to put him in, it would be for either Saliba or March. And honestly, I think your 11 is just about fine. Will Martinez start both games? I think so. I think he's one of the most nailed on United players. I know he didn't start the games, just after the World Cup, but now he's fully back in, fully fit, in the match rhythm. Yeah, I think he's the most nailed on Man United defender, arguably. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that very much. I'll see you on Friday as well, and have a good weekend too. Enjoy the football. Is Nketiah a good move for Martinelli? Yeah, I think Nketiah is a better option than Martinelli right now. He's more nailed. Probably get more bonus points and goals, but would I get rid of Martinelli and get Nketiah in this week? Not necessarily, but heading into 23 and beyond, yes, looks pretty good. Just bear in mind that Jesus is back on the pitch, so he could be available, in, let's say, the end of February, beginning of March. So that's something else you have to have in the back of your mind. Do I think Nketiah is a better option than Martinelli? Yes, I think it's a worthwhile transfer, but I also prefer the likes of Odegaard and Saka to cover the Arsenal attack. Thank you, Car, and thank you, Noah, as well. Much appreciated. I'll see you very soon on Friday for the deadline stream. More UCL Fantasy content coming your way with the latest draft, the team selection, and the deadline stream for that as well. So take care, enjoy the football. I wish you the best of luck for Game Week 22, and I'll see you next time.